Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey folks, welcome to The Team House. This is episode 89. I'm Jack Murphy here with co-host Dave Park. Our guest tonight is Bill Gage. Bill is a former Secret Service agent, also still in law enforcement today. We're really happy to have you on the show. You're our first Secret Service agent, Bill.
Thanks, Jack. And as I told you guys before we went live, whenever somebody hears I'm in the Secret Service, I always get two questions. You know, was I in Colombia and do I know Dan Bongino? I always get those two questions. So I'm glad to be on. Thanks, guys.
Were you in Colombia and do you know Don Bongino?
No, I was not in Colombia. I was at the White House, actually, when that scandal broke, and we can get into how I heard all about that. And I do know Dan. I used to work with Dan quite frequently. He was on PPD, was not on CAT, but I used to work with Dan quite frequently. And the last time I spoke with him, he gave me some really good advice. I spoke with him probably 2013 or so, and he had left the service too, and we were kind of talking a little bit about what it's like when you leave the service.
So, Bill, as we get started here, as you know, Jack and I are both big comic book geeks, and we always like to ask our heroes, people like you, what's your origin story? How did you get your superpowers? How did you grow up, and what drove you into law enforcement and ultimately but the Secret Service and then into what you do now?
Yeah. So I grew up, my dad was a career Navy guy. He was enlisted. He did like 23 years in the Navy. He was an enlisted guy. And I'm sure you know this, Dave, and Jack, I think, knows a little bit about it. But, you know, I grew up listening to my dad complain about no good, no nothing officers. And in the Navy, there's this real break, man, this wall between officers and enlisted guys. You know, the officers have separate messes, separate berthing. And so I just grew up listening to my dad complain about, you know, officers. And so I just grew up with this sort of like resistance to authority. And so I grew up listening to my dad complain about officers a lot. And I also would grow up with my dad, man. We would watch these war movies, you know, Toro and Kelly's Heroes. And we would stay up late. My mom would yell at us and we'd watch these movies. Excuse me. You know, I know you guys have talked about so it's not Hollywood, war is not Hollywood and that kind of thing. But, you know, when you're a young kid, it's really cool to stay up with your dad and watch these type movies. And when I was probably 4, man, we were at the commissary. I was a little bit older, maybe 5 or 6. And we were at the commissary one day. And this lady was parked in the fire lane in front of the commissary. And her car was on fire. And she was sitting in the fire lane. Her car was on fire. And she had kids in the car screaming, and she was just in like crisis lockdown mode, man, like condition black, threat condition midnight, just sitting behind the wheel. She just was in a panic mode. And my dad just calmly walked over there and got her and the kids out of the car and moved them away. And the fire department showed up, and my dad just got back in the car and we went home. You know, it was like, here my dad was, I don't want to call him a hero, but, you know, like it was like, hey, man, this is what men do. And I think we went home and he grilled hamburgers or something. I don't remember, but, you know, that had big impact on me. And from my mom's side, long before you could be like this Instagram, YouTube woke star, you know, where you're virtue signaling all the time. My mom protested with MLK and marched along some of those protests. I found that out just before she died. And, you know, a lot of times my mom, when I was really young, would have these young Navy wives over. And Dave, you probably remember this from your Navy days, but, you know, these young girls, 18 years old from nowhere, middle America, they marry their high school sweetheart. He joins the Navy, they get married, and they move to Norfolk, Virginia. And a week later, he's out on a 6-month med cruise.
And they don't know anybody.
And she knows nobody. The car breaks down, the washing machine breaks. And, you know, we had nothing, man. We grew up poor, government cheese, government butter. And I mean, my mom, we had nothing, and she would still help these people, help these girls out. And, the other thing too, I remember as a kid, that really affected me, especially how I view law enforcement. Not only was I poor, I remember as a kid when we moved to Virginia, I was only 6 when we moved to Virginia, and we were trying different churches to see, what church my parents liked. And we were trying a couple in the Hampton Roads area, Virginia Beach area. And, I remember one of them, the pastor from the pulpit was talking about the evils of interracial marriage. And I remember my mom being like, let's go, guys, we're out of here. And I remember another time, an interracial couple had actually walked in and sat down in a pew, and people were clutching their pearls and fanning themselves. And my mom was like, we're out, let's get out of here. So, I kind of got this sort of hero thing from my dad, and this kind of, I don't want to call it, it makes me cringe to say social justice, but that kind of aspect from my mom.
Sure.
And during the Reagan assassination, I came home from school, and a lot of that stuff was being broadcast live on TV, Dan Rather. And I remember asking, my dad came home from work, and I'd been watching that stuff with my sister, and my sister had a big impact on my life. And I'm watching this stuff, I'm a very young guy, and I remember asking my dad and my sister, who are these guys in suits, like shielding the president? And they said, oh, that's the Secret Service. And so it's like, hey, I'm going to have 3 goals in life. I want to be a Secret Service agent, a police officer, and I want to join the Navy as an officer. And so I got 2 out of 3. So I'm doing okay, man. I went to VMI. I'm from Virginia, so I went to the Virginia Military Institute with the hopes of getting a Navy commission. But at the time I was at VMI, I was at the height of the Clinton drawdowns at the military, and they just weren't giving commissions out. And it was like impossible to get a commission. So when I graduated, I went to law enforcement, and eventually in 2002 got hired with the Secret Service. And let me just get a jab in here to the Navy. I tried 3 times to join the it's called the Direct Officer Commissioning Program. I tried 3 times, even last year, tried to join, and made it all the way through, man, to the final selection boards. And just didn't make the cut. It's like super competitive. So if any of those dudes are listening, you missed out, man. So, yeah, that's my origin story.
Well, if you would have gotten commissioned out of VMI, would your dad have disowned you? Being that you would have...
No, it was actually my mom. Believe it or not, my dad secretly supported me. But again, back to these sort of like poor enlisted guys. My mom was pretty savvy, man. She was not naive. And my mom's fear was that I was going to join the Navy and be scraping paint off of ships or mopping floors. That was, luckily my dad he had a rate, he was an electronics technician. So he had a rate. He wasn't, is it a boatsman's mate, Dave? What do they call the poor guys responsible for the ship?
Yeah, that's a rate too, but it's just a hard working rate. Like they're out there like under high seas chipping paint.
Yeah, and so that was my mom's fear. And I really had wanted to go to BUD/S. I had a real interest in the SEAL program, but especially when I was at VMI, it was like impossible, man. They weren't taking a lot of officers.
Would have taken you, Bill.
What'd you say?
Army infantry would have taken you.
maybe.
Sign this guy up.
So yeah, I got 2 out of the 3, man. So if any of those Navy guys that sat on the board are listening, I don't know, you guys missed out, man. So
you're lost.
Anyway,
yeah,
they're lost. But I got 2 out of 3 in life, so of my goals. So I think I'm doing okay. But yeah, so I got hired as a police officer after VMI. So I was in the Metro DC area from '99 to 2002, and then took me a little over a year to get hired with the Secret Service, and got on. So I started agent training in May of 2002, and which was shortly after 9/11. So it was an interesting time. And if you guys don't mind, I'll just go through kind of the training pipeline.
So
for the Secret Service. So
you graduated VMI in 2000?
No, 1999.
99. Okay. All right, great.
1999. And class years are very important in VMI. So you're like insulting me that it was 2000. But anyway, so yeah, in 2002, started with the Secret Service, and everybody but the FBI and the DEA all other federal law enforcement go to FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. It's in Glencoe, Georgia. It's this massive complex, man. It's in an old World War II air base. It's huge. And, I got down there, and it's crazy. You have people getting police trainings, people getting special agent training, and it's the program I was in is a 12-week. It's called the Criminal Investigator Training Program. And I love the movie Men in Black. If you guys ever seen that movie, there's a famous scene where he says, "You're what we've come to expect from years of government training," and that's the what it's like down there. It's just this. Let's get everybody through. That has no. If you've been a cop before, you've interviewed people and responded to calls, it's kind of a joke. But it's a 12-week program. It's not bad. But they have a bar on campus, in the middle of campus. It's a pretty famous bar. They call it the G Bar, and beer is like $1. So I spent a lot of time in there, just hanging out, drinking beer, and working out. But excuse me. So after that 12-week program, then the Secret Service has their own 14-week school at the training facility in Beltsville, Maryland, which is called the Raleigh Training Center. In Secret Service lingo, it's RTC. And that's where you really learn about what the Secret Service does, the protection methodologies, protective formations, firearms. And that's really a step up from FLETC. It's a very difficult course, a lot of physical training, a lot of precise firearms, a lot of defensive tactics. And so I got done with that course in November 2002 and reported to the Washington field office.
So everybody knows Secret Service protects the president, but what else? But that's a very, very small part of the Secret Service. Like, what are the jobs or the primary jobs of the Secret Service?
Yeah. Are you guys okay if I switch over to the Jura?
We would love it. And
Okay.
So Jura is from an island called Jura. That's what you're saying?
That's what the box said, from an island called Jura off the Scottish coast. Bottled at Isle of Jura, Scotland.
Okay.
So it's a single malt.
Sweet.
Let me hold it up if you guys want to try it. Any people listening in, if they want to try it.
Yeah, we'll give it a shot.
So the Secret Service, I always hated the name. It has a really silly name. And you can look at the history. There's some historical disputes on whether it was the last thing Lincoln signed before he was loaded up his carriage to go to a Ford Theater. There's a lot of historical talk about that. But anyway, it was founded in 1865 originally to combat counterfeiting, which was huge after the Civil War. There was a lot of counterfeiting. And it wasn't until the assassination of William McKinley, who was President William McKinley. He was assassinated in 1901. And that's when the Secret Service was tasked with protection of the president. And slowly, over time, the vice president started to receive protection, and their families started to receive protection. The Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Secret Service is also responsible for visiting foreign dignitaries, heads of states, king and queens, the way it's written into the U.S. Code. So they sort of have dual responsibilities: financial investigations, including the counterfeiting of U.S. currency, and protection of the president, vice president, and it sort of says others as directed.
It's interesting because they're two very, you would think, two very different mission sets. But I guess at the end of the day, outside of just the close protection, they do a lot of investigations into threats.
And it's interesting that J. Edgar Hoover never snatched that up from you guys and was like, yeah, we're giving this to the FBI. But still, it's like an interesting historical curiosity. The Secret Service.
That's right. And nobody can explain it. It's super odd and weird. And there's been a lot of talk over the years of splitting that up and having, because I believe in 2003 or 2004, when they created DHS, there was a lot of talk, because I was in the Secret Service at the time, there was a lot of talk of them putting all the investigative arms under the Department of Treasury and keeping the protection arm with the U.S. Secret Service. And it just never happened. So it's definitely a unique mission. And, but yeah, I read investigations they've done, big financial fraud cases. And so the guys out in the field, there's offices all over the country, LA, Dallas, Miami, New York, and most major cities and a couple small cities around the country. They have field offices. And those guys are investigating a financial fraud and then will do protection sort of part-time when they're needed locally if the president visits that area, or if they need to fly out as part of what we call or what the Secret Service calls a jump team, where they'll assist in protection. The full-time details are based out of DC.
Now, are the ones that are in the field offices? Are they also responsible for investigating threats to the president and whatnot, or is that different?
They are, and so typically the way it works, the threats against the president, there's an office within, and I think Jack and I have talked about this before. There's an office called the Office of Protective Intelligence, and that's based out of DC. So let's say a guy in Des Moines, Iowa, says, I'm going to kill the president, or I'm going to harm the president or the vice president, whoever. Let's say he does that. Somehow that threat will probably make it to local law enforcement, or if not, sometimes it gets filtered to the FBI, and eventually it'll make its way to Secret Service headquarters where they farm it out. And those are treated with the utmost sort of like immediacy, where it's like, you got to go now. If a guy gets caught with $10,000 in counterfeit bills, maybe you go out tomorrow whenever you got a chance. But if there's a serious threat against the president or another protectee, those agents are going out right away to find this person, interview them. And the Secret Service, I would say, is probably the best in the world with protective intelligence. They look at three things: means, opportunity, and motive. Do they have one of those three things? And sometimes people are in a mental institution, they're not getting out anytime soon. They'll still go investigate that, but do they have the means, motive, and opportunity? They don't have the means, they definitely have the motive, but they don't have the opportunity. So they'll kind of write them off. And when I was there were some pretty serious threats against the president where, we couldn't find the person. I wasn't involved in actually tracking him down, obviously, but we would get sort of the threat intelligence that, hey, this guy's out there and nobody can find him. That would happen quite frequently. But I would say the Secret Service is probably the best in the world. And that all came out of the JFK assassination. A lot of what was in the, I'm drawing a blank here. Is it the Warner Commission?
I believe so.
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah. I'd have to look it up. Sorry, but a lot of that came out of the commission after the JFK assassination. That the Secret Service needed a robust protective intelligence section, and so they really stood that up and got it going. And I would say probably best in the world.
Yeah. Now, is the investigative side and the protective side, are they two different career paths, or will people switch?
It's complicated, Dave. When I joined in 2002, the standard path that was kind of your only option, you would do about 3 to 5 years in a field office, wherever you came from or wherever you were assigned. You would then get assigned a permanent protective, or I should say semi-permanent protective assignment, PPD or VP. At the time were your only options. That's since increased. Now they have some other protective related responsibilities you can do, where you would have to move to DC. You do about 3 or 5 years on that detail. It has since changed for a variety of reasons, quality of life. Sometimes people just want to work cases and do protection part-time. They don't want to fool with moving to DC and moving their families. Sometimes people love protection, man, and they don't want to do anything else. So it's kind of changed now, and you can do one or the other, sort of, if that's what you want to do.
So can you tell us a little bit about, I know you said some of the things, but like when you were in the academy or in the training or RTC, what were your thoughts? What were some of the fun parts about it? What were some things that you thought were amazing to learn? What sucked?
Yeah. So it's a really cool facility. I mean, it's massive, miles and miles of roads. There's a big, massive driving track. There's several tactical villages, and for somebody like me, that's all they wanted to do in life. That's really one of their life goals. You're kind of like, wow, man, pinch me. I'm here. It's really cool. And the firearms are very, very difficult. They have some indoor firing ranges where you're doing really precise shooting. I don't want to say so much tactical shooting. There's a big emphasis on the fundamentals of firearms, trigger squeeze, and sight picture, just really, really precise shooting. There's some medical stuff. There's a lot of, at the time, some of the, I guess they call it CBRE or whatever, the Chem Bio stuff was really standing up, and we're getting a lot of briefings on that. There's a pretty nice pool with a kind of a helicopter mock-up and a plane mock-up, and you do some stuff in the pool. If you survive a plane crash, there were some agents killed during Nixon. They were killed in a helicopter crash, and some of them were later found still strapped into the helicopter seat. So there was some emphasis on that, and so there was some really cool stuff there. And the driving is really cool. I was really motion sick, man. I get motion sick very easily, and so what they do is they teach you at first how to drive in sort of a sports car. And so when I was there, it was Mustangs. I think now they drive Dodge Challengers maybe, but you learn how to drive in a sports car first, and then they transition over to a limo, to an armored limousine or an armored Suburban. And you start to learn the vehicle dynamics, the weight shift, and you drive different courses, high speed, low speed, push outs. If you drive up and there's like a roadblock, like you see in, is it clear? What's the Harrison Ford? Is it Clear and Present Danger, where they get the famous assassin?
They get penned in on both sides of the street.
They get pinned in on both sides. So you learn how to do push outs, and one of the cool things is you're actually doing push outs where you're actually hitting vehicles at full speed, and you learn to hit them if you can at the light side of the vehicle. So if it's a Suburban, you want to hit them in the back side, not the engine side, because that's the lightest, and you can push out. And you learn off-road, on-road, off-road, off-road, if you got to drive on the shoulder, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, and then you get into, they actually bring in role players, and you get into scenarios where you're working a protectee on a rope line. That's when it really starts to get fun, when you're working the rope line, and they have role players and different AOPs or assault on protectees. So that's really cool. You learn the protective formations, and that's when it really gets fun.
That's awesome.
Super cool. So, Bill, I'd really like to hear about I think you said it was one of the first big investigations you got involved in, which was a counterfeiting case that involved all kinds of different players and North Koreans and all sorts of stuff. I'd really like to hear the story behind that.
So that case was really unusual for the Secret Service, because a lot of cases, the Secret Service was not sort of set up or geared to work that type of case. It was more of an FBI type case. And the Secret Service does really good investigations, but they're really not set up for a long-term multinational investigation involving intel agencies. So I got to the Washington field office in 2002, and this is a true story, man. So I got there in November 2002, probably March of 2003. I just was in the office one night. I was assigned to an investigative squad, and it was probably almost 5 o'clock. And my boss at the time, he just leaned out. Who's out there? Gage, you're out there. Come in here. And nobody else was there. And he came in. I walked into his office, and he said, "Hey, I just got a call. You need to call this lady at Main Justice. There's some kind of case they want some Secret Service expertise on, and you're going to have to get an SCI clearance, and you need to give them a call, and apparently this needs to be done ASAP." And I think it was like a Friday, man. And I said, all right, I'll get to it on Monday. And so Monday came around, and I made sure, and if you already have and I don't want to get into the weeds, and I'm not a clearance guy, man, but if you have a top secret clearance, that the SCI is like another level. You have to sit through another briefing. And so I sat through an SCI briefing and got my clearance, called this lady at Main Justice. And what we say at work, what had happened was, Bush had given his big speech on the axis of evil, right? North Korea, Iran, and Iraq. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Was that the axis of evil? Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a National Security Council meeting, and they were really concerned about North Korea. Kim Jong-il at the time was sort of holding the world nuclear hostage. And they went around the room at this national security table and they said, listen, this country's currency is not traded on the world market. You can't go get North Korean, it's not won, I think it's yen. I don't remember what the North Korean currency is, but you can't get it on the world market. It's not publicly traded. How is this regime being funded? And they said it's illicit activities. They're counterfeiting U.S. currency. They're counterfeiting pharmaceuticals and arms trades. And so the National Security Council said, well, if they're counterfeiting U.S. currency, why aren't we investigating that? And it kind of went around the table. Nobody had any answers. And so the order came down from essentially the president and his staff. What's going on with the counterfeiting of U.S. currency? Well, buried in the bowels of the Secret Service was this dusty old counterfeit case from 1989 that turned out the Secret Service had been investigating for years. So in 1989, at the Bank of the Philippines in Manila, long before, and things have probably changed now, but at the time, some of these foreign banks did not have very expensive money counters. And so tellers would sit here and count U.S. currency. And the $100 bill is the most commonly traded currency in the world, the U.S. $100 bill. And so this poor Bank of Philippines cashier, she comes across this bill and she says, it just doesn't feel right to me. Mm-hmm. Something's up with this. And the way it worked at the time was she put it in a stack of counterfeit bills, and it made its way back to Secret Service headquarters. This was 1989, and the Secret Service has the world's best document and or counterfeit currency examiners, and they examined the bill. Hey, this is a 100% legit bill. They sent it back.
Wow.
And so every couple months, these bills started coming back, and somebody at the Secret Service, this was like 1990-ish, said, let's take a better look at this bill. And the way the money is printed at the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, it's pretty fascinating. You can read about it, or you can take tours. They actually have these engravers that take these plates and they hand carve them, okay, into the plates. And when they hand carve them, they make these things that the Secret Service calls defects. And I'm really getting into the weeds here, guys. It's like, I'm really wonky, man.
But it's fascinating.
Okay, so the engraver will make a defect, not purposely, but it's just the way he engraves when he like is touching the metal, and it could be a little tiny piece and it's impossible to replicate that. And the Secret Service calls them defects, and they'll have them all over the bill. So sometimes there have been like 4 or 5 what we call defects. And so when you're examining a bill as a Secret Service agent, you know what the defects are. You can look and be like, yeah, that's counterfeit. It doesn't have the defect. And so they examine these bills and they're like, yeah, wait a second. It's printed on the same paper. It has the same ink, but it doesn't have these defects. And so an investigation was started, and this investigation ran all the way through to 2003. When I got assigned, and they had agents chasing, at the time, there were, in the late 80s and 90s, there were a lot of Hezbollah guys passing these bills, so the service was chasing these all over the Bekaa Valley. There were a lot of CIA assets trying to figure out the source of these bills. And in the mid to late 90s, the Secret Service discovered that the president of the IRA, this guy named Sean Garland, who was a well-known IRA terrorist, had been passing these bills and had a whole crew of people passing these bills. And so several intel agencies began tailing this guy, Sean Garland, and he would make trips to Russia and to North Korea and get packages of these bills, and then go to Europe and launder the money to then fund IRA activities. And listen, I had no business working this case at all. Zero, man. I mean, this should have been like a really senior agent. I just happened to be in the office late, in the afternoon, and somehow, you know how the government works, bureaucracy, it just filtered down to me. And so I started working this case with the two U.S. attorneys or assistant U.S. attorneys. I don't want to give their names here. One is retired. One is still an active U.S. attorney or assistant U.S. attorney. Phenomenal, consummate professionals. I mean, unbelievable national security experience. One of them was the lead prosecutor on the Robert Hansen case. And they really taught me how to work a case and getting evidence. The three of us spent days at the CIA going through diplomatic cables and just to keep the listeners, so I don't bore them, but eventually after many trips overseas, I went to several countries, worked with several foreign intel agencies, the CIA. We had to coordinate with all these U.S. government agencies. Some of the guys, we had a informant. I'm not going to give up his name or what country he's from, but this guy was a really highly placed informant. If they found out who this guy was, he'd be killed. Gave us some information on where Sean Garland was. And so one of the highlights of my career, man, I was sitting in a command post and I watched the SAS take down Sean Garland in Belfast, which is, wow. A lot of people think Northern Ireland is actually a separate country. It's not. It's part of the British Commonwealth. And so the SAS, a couple of these guys sat in a pub drinking beer most of the day, waiting for him to show up. And he showed up at a certain place and time. And I watched the SAS do a takedown. And so He was arrested. He ended up making bail shortly thereafter. He went back to Dublin. And you can go on his website, seangarland.org. He died last year, maintaining his innocence. But one of the cool things about that case was it was the first ever indictment of the Republic of North Korea, the DPRK. It's the first indictment of the DPRK being involved in illicit activities. And you can Google the indictment. Very proud of it. We did great work. I had a great partner. I'll give his initials, Gage, if you're listening. Great dude. Him and I worked together on that thing, man. And we had a lot of good times, a lot of wild stories of stuff we did on that case. We were in trouble all the time. But it was really cool. We flew some people to the United States, some informants, some intel assets from MI5. We had another asset from MI6 that flew over. It was the first time an MI5 and MI6 asset testified in a U.S. court. Unbelievable. We had to arrange security for these guys. It was really cool. But when it was all said and done, we got an indictment. Sean Garland died. He was stuck in Dublin. He could not leave. And yeah, so that was a case, man. I worked that all the way up till I got to CAT.
What were you getting in trouble for? Or who were you getting in trouble with?
So my partner, JH, we were in real uncharted territory. I mean, some of the stuff we were doing, nobody had, in the Secret Service at least, and the FBI for that matter, I mean, according to the people, the assistant U.S. attorneys we work with, no intel assets had traveled to the United States to testify in a U.S. court. And so, him and I were whatever the saying is, I've heard different versions, but ask forgiveness first, or ask forgiveness later kind of guys. And we just did what we thought was right. And so, yeah, I mean, we were doing, we would meet with diplomats, man. We would meet with a U.S. ambassador to Ireland. Somebody would call us and say, hey, can you fly over here and meet the U.S. ambassador to Ireland? And we would be like, he wants a briefing on the case. We'd be like, yeah, we'll be over there. We'll fly. And we'd go over there and meet this guy. And we'd give the ambassador a briefing. And then we'd get in trouble that we didn't notify, Secret Service supervision.
Right.
Be like, well, listen, man, I mean, and, the funny thing was when some of these assets came over to testify, I'll never forget this. We had jumped through all of these hoops to get this U.S. Or this foreign intel asset to testify in U.S. court. We actually had 3 of them. And one of them who was flying over, it was a Friday afternoon because a lot of these flights over there leave at night so that they land here in the morning. He had loaded up his flight. He was over the Atlantic Ocean and it was 5 o'clock DC time. And they're ahead of us, so whatever time he is over the Atlantic, my partner Gage and I mean, we're packing up, getting ready to leave because he was the asset was going to land. He was going to have the weekend, kind of Saturday, Sunday, to do his thing, and then we were going to brief him, and he was going to testify before the grand jury on Monday. The Secret Service supervision comes to us at like 5 o'clock. We're literally walking out of the building. Hey, this is a bad idea. We don't want this guy to testify. And we're like, listen, this is like a hurricane off the coast, man. This thing is like in motion. We can't stop it. And, those kind of things. So we were always in trouble for something. And it ultimately ended up in an indictment. And him and I did great work. He's still in federal law enforcement. That's why I wouldn't give his name. But bang up guy. We had a lot of good times. He's a great investigator.
What was their justification for not wanting you to bring, I mean, if the Foreign Intel Service itself doesn't have a problem with it, or, gave him reasonable cover or whatever.
Right. Dave, I'm sure you or Jack never experienced an officer in the military that never wanted to threaten their career. So these bureaucrats, these comfy GS-14, SES-1s, and the Secret Service, when, and my partner and I were great. We were briefing our supervision all along the way. This is what we're doing. This is what's happening. And then when it comes time and it finally gets up to somebody, I don't want my career threatened because these two yahoos who are GS-13s think it's a good idea. So that's why. They didn't want their career threatened. But of course, oh, man, when we got this indictment, Dave, these guys,
all the credit.
The supervisors, look what we approved. Oh my God, this is incredible. And so that's how it goes down.
I think it's so awesome. It's like something out of a Tom Clancy novel on one hand, but it's like the whole thing kicks off because a Filipino woman in a bank in Manila is feeling $100 bills, and she's like, "This doesn't feel quite right." And she sends it to the Secret Service ultimately, and they're like, "Nah, checks out, honey. It's good." And it's just years later that the bureaucracy catches up, like, nah, something's going on here. And because of 9/11 and George W. Bush's speech, now there's this renewed emphasis on counterfeiting.
Renewed emphasis. And it was funny because I eventually got on CAT in 2007, and we can get into that. But 2008, 2009, and this happens, man, I'm telling you, and I'm not a foreign policy guru. I try to keep up. I do a lot of reading. I was a history major at college, but every so often I'd be on CAT and I'd be in a motorcade or I'd be sitting outside wherever the president was, and I'd get this phone call. There would be this renewed interest in the case. It's like people get interested in North Korea when they're testing nuclear weapons, and then they just forget about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's more interest. What's going on with this case? And so that's, and there's some really classified, highly classified portions of the case that I obviously can't get into. But it was, I was lucky to be a part of that thing. It was really cool.
How did you guys connect this kind of cold case, that had been floating around for a while to your case and the whole North Korea thing?
Well, a lot of people didn't believe, a lot of people thought, it's all intelligence, right? A lot of stuff was gathered by intel agencies, CIA, NSA, foreign intel agencies that shared it, MI5, MI6 that shared it with the CIA. And so a lot of people, especially Secret Service supervision at the time, were like, oh, it's intelligence, we can never use it. There was a lot of wiretaps from foreign intelligence agencies that had heard some of these North Korean diplomats. We had a lot of wiretap transcripts. And so people thought we could never use this in court, and they never even bothered. And so my partner, Gage, and I, man, we were like, well, is it possible? Can we use this in court? Has anybody ever asked? And so the way him and I operated, man, I mean, he's a dude's dude. He's got a lot more testosterone than I do. And, we would fly to these foreign countries, or we would bring a lot of these foreign intelligence agencies. We'd bring them to the U.S. We'd take them out for beers, man. We'd take them out to Old Town Alexandria, and they would be like, why did you bring us here? We'd be like, we'll talk about that later, man. Let's have fun. Let's drink some beer. And we'd hang out and talk. And, a couple of these guys I had to my house. We had cookouts. We had a cookout at my partner's house. And we'd be like, hey, it's Saturday, man. We'll talk business Monday. And Monday comes around, they're like, you know what? We think we'll share that info with you guys. And it's not so much that we were wine and dining and we're pulling any wolves over their eyes. It was that for years, they just would get a stiff arm from the Secret Service. And my partner and I were kind of the first time that they had met guys that were like, hey, what's up, man? We're just dudes. You're a dude. We're in law enforcement. You're in law enforcement or intelligence. And we're all doing the same thing here. And it just, we kind of bridged that gap, Dave, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, fascinating.
From the North Korean side, were you able to uncover how they were able to manufacture such convincing U.S. dollars, U.S. currency, and ultimately were you able to stymie that flow of counterfeit money in the end?
So let me answer the second question first. No, that very first bill from 1989 still shows up today as counterfeit. It's still in circulation, that original series of counterfeit from 1989. So what ended up happening was the Secret Service, really the Department of Treasury, I should say, in cooperation with the Secret Service, had to do an entire redesign of of U.S. currency. And it's been so long since I've studied this stuff, guys, but I believe in 2004 or just before that, the Department of Treasury and Bureau of Printing and Engraving reintroduced a new $100 bill, which was called the Big Head. Mm-hmm. So Ben Franklin's head takes the whole portion of the bill, and that was done directly in response to the Supernote, the 1989. Another feature of the bill that the Bureau of Printing and Engraving introduced was what was called OVI, or optically variable ink. So on the right side is a very, very expensive ink from a company called Sipka that's in Sweden, I believe. It's the only place where this is produced. And it says 100, and if you turn it, it goes from green to gold. That is very expensive ink. And very strangely, the North Koreans redesigned their currency shortly after this was introduced, this $100 bill. And strangely enough, they were ordering OVI ink. That's very strange that the North Koreans would order that. Mm-hmm. And you can read all of that in the indictment. But short answer, the Secret Service, we never figured out how they did it, and they're still doing it to this day. My partner and I, just in consultation with intel agencies and Bureau of Printing and Engraving, our assumption is that they were reverse engineering it, just kind of looking at it. Mm-hmm. And all of the materials in U.S. currency is proprietary, right? The paper is made by Crane & Company. Everything is proprietary. And it's, obviously you can't purchase that. So for instance, and you can read it in the indictment, the OVI ink that the North Koreans were trying to purchase, they were trying to purchase Liberty Green, which is the color of that OVI ink. And when Sipka, the company, told them, hey, no, that's proprietary, why would you? And they were like, well, we want the next color shade green that you can get. What's the next color? So we think that they reverse engineered it.
Yeah. Fascinating. It's very interesting what happens when you have the full power of a government to engage in basically organized criminal behavior.
So what I ended up being lucky and participating in some debriefs of some defecting North Korean diplomats, and I sat in with some agency folks, and what we talked about was classified, but I can talk about that. I met with these guys or sat in on the debriefs, and basically, you look at their country. Am I allowed to curse here, man?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
All right, their country is shit. Their infrastructure is shit.
Yeah.
So we're sort of insulated here in the U.S., but when you travel abroad, there's North Korean embassies, man, and the embassies, these diplomats are poor. They don't have money, and so one of the ways that they help fund sort of running spies and how they pay for things is they get this counterfeit currency from Pyongyang.
Fascinating.
Wow, yeah, it really is, and it's just something like, I never heard this story before.
No,
I heard a part of this story from a different contact about super notes in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon, And
that's what I was saying earlier, Jack, was like the Secret Service and the CIA were chasing their tail in the Baca Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And what here I go again with what had happened was, and so what had happened was, listen, and this is true with any illicit activity, man. If you're a drug dealer, if you're a money launderer, you get these piles of money. Well, you got to get rid of them somehow. So what was happening was the North Koreans were printing all of this money, and they had to get rid of it somehow. And so they were using it with subversive groups all around the world, right?
Wow.
So the IRA, the PLO, the PLLFP. Am I saying that right?
PLFP,
it was like
in Palestine,
Yeah, that's right. And Hezbollah. So they were funneling this money to other subversive groups. So one of the big arguments, my partner Gage and I, we'd sit in these briefings with State Department folks, NSC folks, DOD would be in there, NSA, and we would listen to these debates about, well, is this economic terrorism? Is this subversive activity to try to just annoy the United States? We would sit and listen to these debates, and who knows, man? I think it was economic terrorism. I don't know if it was an attempt to just take down our economic system. I don't know, but I do know the Department of Treasury, they didn't want any of this to get out, because they were like, if there's a confidence, if the confidence is lowered in the value of the US dollar, if we let it get out there that we have counterfeit $100 bills all over the world, confidence in the US dollar is going to plummet.
Yeah.
And so it was like real hush hush for a while.
Is there any indication or any hint to how much the North Korean government was printing?
No indication. Part of the difficulty in estimating the money is a lot of people overseas will take U.S. currency, and I'm not joking, like stash it under their mattress, right? Some of these people don't have banks. Right. Now, some of it's changed. I haven't investigated this case since 2007. So some of it's changed with the advent and proliferation of sort of electronic currency and PayPal. But at the time, people were legitimately taking $100 US bills and stashing them under their mattress. And so it would be years before some of this stuff would get in circulation, when people would take their life savings, which might be 5,000 US dollars, and they would put it into circulation by buying something. So when I left in 2007, it was in like the $90-100 million range. And that was just what had been detected.
Right.
And so a lot of the counterfeit detection equipment that ended up getting distributed at the different FRBs, the Federal Reserve banks around the world, a lot of that equipment was designed specifically to find the defects present in the supernote.
Wow. Did you guys have an opportunity to interview the woman at the Bank of Manila and what it was that clued her into it?
No, she had long since retired, and we were never able to find her, but we were able to read kind of her handwritten notes. And it was fascinating because it was 1989, and in this foreign country, they didn't have the sophisticated money counting machines and counterfeit detection machines that they have now. And it was all done by hand. And it was interesting because she probably handled tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars every day. And she's just sitting here counting, and just something didn't feel right. She had felt so much genuine currency, US currency. It was just something was wrong with this bill. Yeah, it was fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
So the next step in your Secret Service career, the counter assault team. Can you talk to us about what is the counter assault team? What was your pathway there?
Yeah, so one of the big missions in the Secret Service on the protective side, and I shouldn't say missions, but sort of like ethos when you're doing protection. It's one of the things when I watch these cheesy celebrity bodyguard videos, when somebody runs up for an autograph or something, I laugh, but it's the Secret Service operates on this thing. It's called cover and evacuate, and maximum to the protectee, minimum to the problem, right? Maximum to the protectee, minimum to the problem. So if somebody comes out with a knife, don't go for the knife. You're supposed to shield the protectee, right? So maximum to the protectee, minimum to the problem. Well, CAT operates on the opposite, which is maximum to the problem.
Okay.
So So in 2007, I tried out for CAT. There's a very strenuous selection course called the CAT Selection School, and I didn't make it the first time. There's a very strenuous. I passed the PT portion, but there's a rifle and a pistol course that you have to qualify, and I passed the rifle and I failed the pistol. Went in the second time and passed the selection course the second time. Got selected to go to the CAT school and went. So that would have been in early 2007. It's a really silly story, man. The second day I got shingles. I had this massive outbreak of shingles. And one of the CAT instructors, shingles is not contagious, but one of the CAT instructors had not had chicken pox and was petrified that he, I'm really sorry, guys, but my daughter has come. Do you want to kiss me good night, sweetie? Have a good night, sweetheart. Have a good night. That's all right. You're good, sweetie. You're good. One of the CAT instructors had not had shingles, and he was petrified, had not had chicken pox. So he was petrified that he was going to get it. My daughter just knocked over a lamp. We're good here, guys. And sometimes my daughter won't take no for not getting a kiss goodnight. So they made me recycle. And so I went through a second time and was doing great. But there's a very specific CQB portion, which is they don't take any, you get 2 failures during the CQB portion, which is 3 weeks. You're doing a lot of live fire, live breach, live bangs. And I just had a brain lapse, man, where I just absolutely just had a brain lapse. I had a mistake. Yeah. And it wasn't a safety violation, but I had to roll out of the school. I got flagged, and they said, listen, you can come back again. So at the time, I was the only person to do 3 CAT schools. So I came back for a third time, made it through. That's all RITC. And it was interesting at the time, most of the civilian CAT instructors, because they had a civilian cadre of instructors at the time, man, this is right at the height of Iraq and Afghanistan. As far as the military was, the only guys that had real experience at the time were all law enforcement guys. The military guys were all overseas fighting wars. And so a lot of the tactics, the techniques, even the equipment. I mean, when I came on CAT, the equipment was terrible. We were still using long-barreled M16s. And when I got on CAT, I mean, it was like, bam, man, this change happened. We started getting all this cry gear and short-barreled rifles. Right. And, double bangers, triple bangers. We started getting all of this better ammo, better gear. And so, but yeah, I made it through, and I got on in December of 2007. And so CAT's mission is divert, suppress, neutralize. So if there's an attack on the president, and as I went through my CAT career, some of the mission profiles expanded. We ended up protecting Sasha Malia, and we ended up getting assigned to Biden. And sometimes we would travel with foreign presidents when they would go overseas. I tell people all the time, the most dangerous trips I ever took were with former presidents. Like former President Carter, he would go to Cairo, he'd go to the West Bank. Just chilling. He would take these super dangerous trips. Yeah. And I think the guy legitimately, he just loved it. I think he loved some of these dangerous trips. But so CAT's mission is divert, suppress, neutralize, and attack, so the ship can cover and evacuate and get out of there. That's what CAT's mission was. So, and I should say, man, I barely made it through CAT school. I was the worst shooter, the worst on tactics. I just hung on by a thread, man. I'm just a slow learner. And I remember you make it through, and I remember the graduation day. I remember one of the CAT instructors came over to me and he said, "You didn't really pass. You just didn't quit. You know, he was like, you just like hung on by the skin of your teeth every single day. And at first that kind of bothered me a lot, and for a couple years, but I look back on it now and I'm kind of like, well, man, I hung in there, you know, and I did what I could. And, you know, you have to understand, and I've worked with a lot of FBI folks, and I'm just talking about the Secret Service in particular. Listen, you're talking, I mean, I worked with guys that were Ivy League graduates, former SEALs, SF guys, just University of Michigan. I mean, I worked on, one of my guys I worked on CAT, it was on my CAT platoon for a long time. You know, he played professional hockey, had gone to University of Michigan, just unbelievably smart people. And I was humbled every single day I was there. So it took me a while on CAT, probably 3 or 4 years. I'm just a slow learner, man. And it was just a while before I could really feel like I could hold my head up high as, you know, be on the range. And there were like probably first 2 or 3 years, man, where I'd be the worst shooter. I'd be embarrassed. I'd rip my target down really fast. I wanted everybody to see it. And, you know, after a while, it just took time for me to kind of pick up little things. And, you know, I remember there's a course of fire that's sort of the CAT standard qualifying course. And right at the end, from the 15-yard line, there's this automatic course of fire where there's several facings of the target. And I remember watching this guy when I was in CAT school, this active CAT operator was coming through, and he was able to empty an entire mag in this 5-second facing of the target. And I mean, he's hitting like, you know, 30 rounds in 5 seconds on full auto, just like this. And I was like, I'll never be able to do that, you know. And after I'd been there a couple years, you just pick things up, and it's just unbelievable guys I work with, man. I'm not going to mention their names here. I know one guy in particular, I'd love to mention his name, but this guy, man, he'd rarely work out, just drank all the time. And he would just rip off 25 pull-ups. He'd go run a 6-minute mile, and he could shoot back-to-back perfect scores, pistol and rifle. And he used to drive me mad, man.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think, though, it's a great example to people who are, whether they're considering a career in some sort of law enforcement or intelligence service or just in their everyday lives, like, don't quit.
Yeah.
Don't quit. You know, you were the only person at the time that went to RTC 3 times, and you didn't quit. You know, you were there for a couple years, 3 years or whatever, before you kind of felt like you belonged. So don't worry about the whole imposter syndrome, like I don't belong here, and sort of self-select yourself out of something. Yeah. Just if you want something, don't quit.
Yeah, and I remember the very first day of CAT selection school, and I remember sitting in this first day, and one of the instructor cadre came in, and the first thing he said was, the only person who's going to put stress or pressure on you is yourself. And I really didn't, at the time, I just, you know, I was happy to be there, and I was like, your head spinning because there's so much stuff going on. But I've always looked back at that, and it's 100% true, man. The only person that puts pressure and stress is you, you know. And and I was able to just, by the skin of my teeth, get through the school, and then just barely hang on, because the standards are tough, and you can be thrown off, man. I mean, if you don't maintain the qualification standards, you can be tossed. And I was just barely hanging on, and it just took time. And you know, we had a lot of guest instructors, especially firearms, that would come in. I was one of the first, before anybody knew who Pat McNamara was. He came to the Secret Service. He had just left, you know, he had already left Delta and had, I forget the name of the training company he was with, but if you guys remember from your various interactions with him, but, you know, that company, the training company, had let him go, and he branched out on his own. And we were like his first, CAT was like one of his first classes he had ever done. And just, we had Kyle Lamb come in, and just these like little things for firearms you would learn about trigger pull and, you know, sight alignment. You would just pick up little things, and it was just over time, after a couple of years, I just kind of, I got better, man. I got better. And it was just this desire to learn, like, how can I get better? And it was so humbling, man, because you're with guys, you know, pull out a gun, just cold bore, man, boom, 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 you know, they're shooting a perfect score, and you're like, fuck, man, how can I, you know, it's just this drive. And I was a competitive guy, played a lot of sports in high school, and I always wanted to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat McNamara is the man. He's a good guy, and so I'm sure he was able to impart some of that wisdom on you.
Unbelievable!
Yeah.
And you know, he wasn't what he is today, kind of the Instagram star, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but
yeah,
you know, I just remember like seeing him for the first time. It was the middle of the fucking summer, man. It was like 130. You know, Virginia is like high heat, high humidity, and I just remember on this outdoor range and. He's just wild and crazy, and you're like, who is this guy? And then you watch some of how he shoots. And I remember the last thing we did the last day was one-handed steel target, just like last man standing. And I've never seen this man. He and of course there were some cat guys and some counter sniper guys in this Pat McNamara course, and one of the counter sniper guys from the Secret Service, it was him and McNamara, and they just kept from the 50 one-handed steel, boom, ting, and back up, and they got to about 75, and the CS guy missed, and here's Pat McNamara, one-handed 75 steel, boom, ting. I was like, wow, it's insane, man.
Yeah.
So it was awesome.
For our listeners and viewers who aren't shooters, shooting one-handed is tough in and of itself. And then at 75 yards with a pistol,
I could do 50 two-handed, maybe on a good day. On a good day, one-handed is 75. No, not happening.
Yeah, and one of the parts of the cat pistol qualification course is 6 rounds from the 50 on a standard Q target, and I was so bad when I was trying out for cat in my first couple of years. I would just aim for the top of the bottle, hoping that I would get down, you know, in this part of the bottle. So
you're jerking the trigger then.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. But you know, I eventually got better. But
sure.
So I was on cat 2007 to 2013. Went to several different countries. Cat's mission expanded. We started protecting Obama's daughters. They had a threat level there. So. And so I got on cat in 2007. The next, it was really soon after I gotten on. Obama was the first candidate to receive cat protection. Excuse me, because of the threat level. So a lot of cat's tactics, gear, equipment was changing because we were getting a lot of feedback from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the threat level was increasing. We had the first black president, and so. Of course, Bush, even though he was a former president after the election in 2008, he had started the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, so he had an increased threat level. And so cat, I mean, it was total like high-speed train, man. I mean, so much was going on. And we cat from scratch. I know a couple guys, really good dudes, had to create for the first time. We called it a two-man element course where it was just 2 cat guys on one of the daughters. We had to rethink our entire tactics, how different it is when you're operating in a 6 or 7 man team versus 2. So a lot of stuff was going on.
So when cat personnel are out there, they're out there with the close protection people also, right? So the close protection people guard the principal.
Protectee.
Right. And then you guys assault basically or engage.
So usually cat is off somewhere. So when the motorcade, they're riding back. If it's an event, say like on a stage somewhere, cat is really off because they don't want to be, if God forbid there's an initial attack, they want to be off so they can survive the attack and then come in and give and the Secret Service would call it the shift, which is the close protection, the PPD, VPD, whoever is working. Call it the shift. Cat wants to survive the attack so that we can come in and give the shift enough time to cover and evacuate.
Fascinating. It's really smart. You know, they didn't talk about that Wild West though. Yeah.
So just to back up a little bit, Dave, you know, cat that all came out of the Reagan assassination. So prior to prior to the Reagan assassination, up to the Reagan assassination, there was no cat. Cat was born sort of out of the Reagan assassination. The Secret Service had this thing they called the muscle car, which was a Gran Torino station wagon. And they would just load it up with agents with shotguns and Tommy guns. And they would ride at the rear of the motorcade. And if there was a problem, they would just jump out. I mean, no tactics, no standards. They called it the muscle car. And at the time, it was usually filled with, Vietnam vets.
Fascinating. And I mean, I can only imagine the standards of shooting that you must have had, because generally, I mean, in a hostage rescue situation, it's sort of the whole CQB thing. There are a bunch of terrorists and maybe one hostage. But in your situation, there are a bunch of civilians and one aggressor, one target, generally.
Yeah, and which was one of the most difficult things that we trained for, especially, look, in 2008, for Obama's nomination to the Democratic Party's nomination to be president in Denver at the DNC. I mean, I was on a CAT team, and our role was to respond to the stage if anything ever happened, if there was an attack while Obama was giving his speech. I mean, I don't even know what that thing seated. I think there was like 65,000 people there. So you're really dependent on the CS guys, the counter sniper guys that have a lot of Overwatch, to help you out. I mean, it was pretty intense.
I can only imagine. Because the Secret Service, I imagine, has to have a somewhat proactive stance. Are mistakes, obviously not shootings, but are mistakes made where they launch on somebody like aggressively and find out that whatever they were doing that looked suspicious actually wasn't?
Not with CAT. You have to remember when at least from the president or even the vice president, when it comes to the president or vice president, they're usually on camera, man, and it's being broadcast to the entire world. If they're giving a speech, it's usually live and being broadcast. So as far as mistakes happen, as far as CAT being deployed, that has never happened. I've been in dozens of situations where we're sitting there looking at the CAT team leader, like, should we go, man? I mean, I was in Martha's Vineyard one time, and Obama, would have been the summer of 2008, 2009, and Air Force One is landing in Martha's Vineyard, or actually Nantucket. It's actually landing in Nantucket, because then I think he was going to helo over to Martha's Vineyard. But, Air Force One is on approach, and as Air Force One is on approach, we had some Overwatch in a helicopter above, and said, we have a group of guys in camouflage with long guns moving to the runway. And it's like, well, holy shit. So you have all of these cameras tuned in, watching Air Force One on approach, right? So if they either wave off and circle around, or if they touch down and then take right back off, I don't want to call it an international incident, but it's going to make news. Like, right. Why is the president circling?
Right.
And so, I mean, the team leader is like, we're just going to hold, man. Let's just see what this is. And they're reporting like, oh, these guys are moving. They're doing like a military formation, they're doing like a bounding Overwatch type military formation, and they're wearing camouflage. And it's like, shit, what is going on here? And so Air Force One circles around, and these Boston State Police, these uniformed guys, ended up intercepting these guys. And I know you guys hate hearing this. This is a no shit true story, man. These fuckers were playing paintball. And I swear to you, man. And they had just not gotten the memo.
Yeah.
And apparently this was like a Saturday paintball club that played paintball here every Saturday or whatever day it was.
Right.
And had just not gotten the memo.
Yeah.
And it took a couple minutes. Air Force One landed, and Obama got out, was none the wiser, got on the helo, and we got out, and we ended up lifting with him, I think, over to Martha's Vineyard. And this all goes down in like 3 or 4 minutes. And so to answer your question, Dave, you think if we had gone full bore, man, and CAT had launched and we engaged these guys, these were like weekend warriors, man, paintball, like LARPers. And, so a major international incident, and it was avoided because I'm not going to give the guy's name. The team leader's a great dude. He's still in the Secret Service. I mean, if he had given the order, we would have gone.
Yeah.
And you think, and I don't want to say we would have killed those dudes, but you think about the camera footage from that.
Sure.
And I'll give his initials, KE, if you're listening, man. It was a good decision. Solid decision under fire, man. He's a good dude.
Yeah. I mean, especially, I don't know if that same, maybe with the Secret Service, I'm surprised that the police force handled it as well as they did, because you would think that maybe today, and under today's heightened tensions, that, the police might have had, or a different police force might have had a different response to seeing guys moving tactically in that kind of situation.
Yeah. And, ironically, that same team leader, KE, we were in Mumbai, India, and during Obama's visit there, geez, man. And I'm sorry if I'm getting the dates wrong. If there's some internet warrior out there checking my dates, 2011, maybe 2012, when Obama went to Mumbai, he was visiting a school, and we were sitting, Kat had our position outside the school, and one of the CS guys, the counter sniper guys, came on the radio and said, "Hey, we've identified a sniper. He's back behind a window. He's got a defilade.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a blanket over the window, and all we see is the barrel, and he's directly overlooking the position. And Obama's getting ready to take the stage." And it's like, fuck, man. And so we're ready to go. I mean, we're thinking this is it. And we're about ready to launch. And KE is like, "Guys, just wait a second. Hold on. Just stand by one." So they send the local Indian police up, and we could probably do a whole show on this visit, man. The Indian police were terrible. It was one of the worst trips I've ever been on. I'll never go back to India. But in fact, you can Google it. The police chief of the Mumbai police force was fired after this visit. Google it. I'm telling you, he was fired after this visit. But we're ready to launch, man. We were going to go. I mean, this was it. And KE was like, "Guys, just stand by 1 second." He's securing the limo. I trust the limo. I trust it. Just stand by 1 second. He got on the radio, said, "Hey, hold him in the limo. Hold him in the limo." And I think they gave him some bullshit story, told Obama it wasn't ready yet or whatever. And they sent the local cops up there. It was some police sniper, man, that thought, I mean, we had gone over this, that we couldn't have police snipers. Secret Service had primacy on this type thing. And it was some Yahoo Indian police sniper, man, that thought it would be cool to look at Obama through his rifle scope.
Oh my gosh.
And again, an international incident, you think if we had launched on that and taken that guy out.
It's fascinating because those are tough calls to make, both for the snipers and for the team leader, because those are really zero or hero type of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only zero, but you're done, man.
Right.
You're done. What do they say in one of the Jack Ryan movies? I want him, or maybe it's maybe one of the Mission Impossible. I want him guarding a radar tower in Alaska or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if the president gets, shot or harmed on somebody's watch, I can only imagine the implications for that.
It's terrible.
On that note, you mentioned the presidential limo, the Beast. I was wondering, if you could tell us about the vehicle. I mean, does it have miniguns in the headlights? What do we need to know about this? What the oil slicks come out of the back? Caltrops? What does it have?
Spy hunter.
The section of the president's detail that deals with the limo in the Secret Service lingo is called TS, or the transportation section. Those are guys that deal with the limo. Those are the ones that drive it. Officially, I was not on TS, all right? I was never a TS guy. It's part of PPD. I should have sent you, Jack. I have so many photos. I meant to send you some pictures of the Beast on a C-17, and I'm sleeping right next to it, because when we would get up in the air, the Air Force guys, we could just sleep whatever. So I would throw it on all the cat dudes. We would typically travel with the Beast because it's got to be there before the president arrives. And I have pictures of me like sleeping right next to the beast, but I don't want to get into. I know what some of the capabilities are. I'm not going to get into it on the podcast. Some are really highly classified that I don't even know about. So I'm pretty sure there's no oil slicks though, man.
Damn.
What was that 80s? What was that 80s game? Arcade game. What, Spy Hunter?
Yeah, right. I think it's Spy Hunter, the car game where you have oil slicks.
Yeah, and you have jacks that would come out and the oil slicks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have, but it has some other classified capabilities. But this is a true story. The same Mumbai trip, all right? The threat level was so high on that trip, and we flew in a day ahead of Obama on that trip. And so we land, and for whatever reason, we had to drive through the slums of Mumbai. And to get to we weren't going to the embassy. We were staging the cars at some kind of embassy offsite. And it was hot as an MFer, man, that day in India. I know you guys probably hate hearing this is a true fucking story. This is a true fucking story.
It was knee deep in hand grenades. We're with you.
This was a brand new limo, all right, from Chevy. And this was like, I don't know, version 3.0 or whatever it was brand new. And supposedly Chevy and the Secret Service had field tested this thing. Well, damn it. The thing overheated on this Indian like road through the slums. It overheats, like steam is coming out of the engine. And the driver, and nobody's in it, right? Nobody's in it. We're driving like an empty motorcade to get to this storage facility, this embassy offsite. And the driver comes on. He's like, guys, I got to stop. This thing is like redlining. It's so hot. And so we stop. Well, I mean, what was that movie with where the Indian guy like wins the lottery or whatever? And he's from the slums of Mumbai.
Yeah.
What was it? $1 Million Baby?
Millionaire.
What was it?
Slumdog Millionaire.
Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah.
It was like Slumdog Millionaire. Like thousands of Indians are coming around, and this is a classified piece of U.S. government property. And KE, the team leader, he was like, guys, let's take up positions around the limo so this thing can get cooled off. And so we take, I mean, like thousands of Indians are like coming out of these slums, man. And we're like, what are we going to do? We can't shoot these people.
Right.
And the guy's like, it's almost cooled down, man. It's almost cooled down. And so it's about 10 or 15 minutes there. And you know, we can't just start wasting Indian civilians because they want to touch this limousine.
Right.
But it ended up cooling down enough, and we were able to get to this offsite. And there's another story I can tell you guys sometime where the TS guy, the night before, or actually Obama had landed, and he tried to fill the thing up with gas from this Indian gas station and decided to put diesel in it. And it was not diesel. And he pumped probably 10 gallons of diesel. And yeah, this is crazy. The Secret Service has some of the world's best mechanics, believe it or not. And these guys are all GMC, Chevy trained, and they go on every single trip. And so I don't remember this guy's name from the TS section, but he pumps probably 20 gallons of diesel into this brand new presidential beast limo. And I remember turning to him, his first name started with W, and I was like, I was filling up the cat truck with unleaded, and I remember looking and I was like, hey, W, that's diesel, man. And the panic on his face, he was like, he said every cuss word, shutting the pump off.
Yeah.
We had to get an Indian tow truck, and Obama was supposed to go live, man, in like 4 hours to this major event with the president of India or the prime minister, whatever it was. And so, you know, these mechanics would rarely get called, but the look on these guys' faces when we had to, and I had to, I mean, it was a mess. And we ended up getting the limo back to this like garage in the embassy. And I hate to do another Tom Clancy movie, but remember that from, God, what is that? Is it Clear and Present Danger where they have the Green Beret team in Colombia?
Yeah.
Do you remember when they're hacking into the guy's computer and they give him the computer and he's like, yes, let me try birthdays. Well, that's what these guys were. We were like, listen, man, we filled this thing up with like 5 or 6 gallons of diesel, and they were just like so excited. And so these mechanics, unbelievable. And like 4 hours, took this whole engine apart, drained all the fuel, cleaned the fuel pump, brand new fuel filter, got this thing up and running. It was amazing, dude, to see these guys work.
Wow.
And the heat of Mumbai, India, it was unbelievable.
That's fascinating. Earlier, when you're talking about driving down in that movie, I thought you were gonna say Stripes. I thought you were talking about the EM50, the Urban Assault. When you're talking about the capabilities. No, but it's amazing because those guys probably have a fairly thankless job, the mechanics. And
a lot of times they don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's like they travel and they hang out and they can't really drink. So they're just along for the ride and they just get to see the world and they just hang out. Unbelievable. These guys were phenomenal that day.
That's amazing. And their moment to shine, really, and show.
Yeah.
Fascinating. What? Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Were there any I mean, obviously the sniper was a very serious situation, but were there ever any serious situations when you were with part of CAT?
Sketchy moments, yeah.
You mean other than that time?
Yeah. I mean, not the paintballers, not the police sniper, but any actual threats that were, I don't want to say neutral.
All the time. All the time. I mean, I remember one time, they used to film this. So let me back up. When I joined the service in 2002, all right, some of the instructors in the Secret Service Academy were, I don't want to say old timers, but they would always talk about Carlos the Jackal. That was like the big threat for the Secret Service for the longest time, was this like lone sniper, Carlos the Jackal. And oh my God, he could be out there, he could be hiding, and he could be disguised. And so that whole thing changed, man, to this sort of like armed group. You just never know. And then it became, which it should have been all along, because if you look at John Hinckley and some of the previous assassins, mentally ill people. And so, but yeah, I remember one time being at the National Building Museum, which is in downtown DC, and Obama was filming. It was filmed to be aired later, what was called Christmas in Washington. It was like some ABC special or something. And I remember we had gotten some intel about this guy that was after one of the daughters, and he was, obsessed with either Sasha or Malia, I don't remember who, and he was going to kill them. And apparently his obsession had moved from one of the daughters, and it was like, he's going to kill Obama, and he's coming here now. And I remember being backstage. I don't think my team leader at the time was KE. It might have been somebody else, but I remember this coming over the air that like, hey, so-and-so who you were briefed on earlier is now en route here to Christmas in Washington. Was on the metro, the DC metro. The surveillance lost him. He could be here right now.
Holy shit.
And you're just like, shit, man. And, you're just rolling the dice at that point. You're really hoping that your protective intelligence, your post standards, that's what the Secret Service calls the outer perimeter, the agents that are holding the posts on the outside, the inner perimeter, these post standards, and the shift, you're just hoping that they're going to do their job. And we left there, hopefully, or thankfully, there was not an incident. I think they found that guy the next day.
Wow. Would you say that social media made the Secret Service's job easier or harder?
100% harder, man. 100% harder, just because, these mentally ill people, I mean, they can go on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I hate to say the word, Dave, but I don't want to say radicalized, because that has so many like Islamic connotations, but can get radicalized as far as like their hatred for a particular candidate or a particular office holder. So yeah, I would say it's worse.
Yeah. Were the threats easier to identify, or was there just so many? Because both Obama and Trump were, I don't want to say that they themselves were necessarily highly polarizing, but they, I don't know, maybe people are already polarized, but they both drew a lot of ire. And probably a lot of people post a lot of things on social media, and some people mean what they say and some people don't.
Yeah, and that's sort of as I mentioned earlier, the protective intelligence. I mean, that's their sort of job. They get a lot of extra training. The Secret Service has some of the best psychologists in the world to sort this kind of thing out. And so it gets really, really difficult to determine somebody's, as I mentioned earlier, means, intent, opportunity. It gets really difficult to ascertain that. And listen, man, we live in a free country, right? And you can say what you want within reason. And, I would say when Obama was elected, there were a lot of people on the right unhappy with that. And,
right.
People would say stuff like, for instance, people would say, like, I hope he gets assassinated. And which is a fucking terrible thing to say. Why would you say that, man? And whatever your political leanings are, Obama thought he was doing what was best for the country. He was a good man. He was a good family man. You might not agree with his politics, but, why would you say something like that? And then, fast forward, Trump gets elected. People on the left said the same thing. Mm-hmm. And Trump was only doing what he thought was best. And I used to tell people all the time when I was in the Secret Service, I used to tell people all the time, listen, we're the United States of America. We are not a third world country where the elected leaders make decisions under threat of a gun. Right? We have established a system here in our country where our leaders should be free to make a decision what they feel is best for the country based on their own political leanings and not under threat of a barrel, right? Under threat of a gun. So that's what I would tell people all the time. And so I think when, I remember back to Denver in 2008, you can Google it. There's stories out there that there were these white supremacists and they were they had built a car bomb and they had a bunch of AK-47s and M16s, and they were going to come crashing through a Secret Service barricade and they were going to try to assassinate Obama. The only reason they got caught, I don't know if they were speeding or driving without their headlights on, but a conscientious Denver police officer pulled them over. There was a pursuit and a shootout, and that's how they got caught. But we're not, and I don't mean to diminish third world countries, and I'm not trying to be like Trump and say like shithole countries. I'm just saying, like, we live in a democracy, man, right. And we have set up this system where we want the president to make decisions based on their own sort of thoughts and intuitions about what's best for the country, and not because they're afraid of their life or their family's life.
Right. I mean, and at the end of the day, if you hate the president, wait 4 years or 8 years.
Boom, there you go. Wait 4 years. And if it bothers you that much, like, form your own political party or go out and protest or go get more people to vote or whatever.
Right.
Don't say dumb shit, man.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of presidents, having worked with old timers, what were some of the best stories you heard, whether they were salacious or how great a person was or how shitty they were towards Secret Service and whatnot?
As far as like far as protectees, like the presidents go.
Yeah. And the first ladies.
There was a guy on CAT. So when Bush was president, this happened just before I got on CAT. So this was like in 2006 when Bush was still president. And he had obviously had his famous ranch. People said Waco, but it was actually, I think, south of Waco. Crawford was the actual city where his ranch was. But he was on the Midnight Cat team sitting just outside of the house. I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 yards. And he was in the cat truck and he needed to relieve himself, as they say. And so he got out of the cat truck and it was like, I don't know, midnight or 1 a.m. and he decided to relieve himself on a tree. And he did. Well, unbeknownst to him, President Bush was kind of, the Iraq war was kind of just kicking off and Afghanistan was going on. And I don't know, he wanted to clear his head. and went for a midnight stroll and walked right up on him as he's pissing on a tree, man. And this cat guy, this agent, I didn't really know him. I know who he is. And I mean, I can tell you guys when we're not live sometime who he is, but just what I heard, the look on his face and the conversation. And apparently Bush was like, caveman, oh my God, caveman over here. We got a caveman peeing on a tree. And it ended up engaging him in conversation, and that became a running joke. So every time President Bush would see a cat team, he'd be like, there's my caveman. And so what I always tell people is, I mean, I've seen President Bush walk up to cat dudes and like smack them on the ass. I mean, he was just like a, great president, but he was just kind of like a frat brother, man. He just thought it was cool to be around these guys, and he would come up and talk to us. And Obama was great. He was very gracious, very nice. It just was a different mentality. So Bush had kind of grown up around the Secret Service, right? His dad, so he was kind of used to that kind of thing. And I think Obama never really thought. Or never really knew. I think eventually he kind of grew to kind of understand how it was. And which reminds me of another story. When Obama was president-elect, so he'd been elected, but was not yet sworn in at the inauguration. And just talk about stories, Dave, about like what you think was an attack. So we were at his house in Chicago, and this is kind of weird. And I don't remember the timeline. I think it was the same time that Bush had gone to Iraq and got the shoe thrown at him.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that?
I remember that, of course.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of juked it, yeah.
And my memories, my memories are shady, and this was so long ago. So I hope I got the timeline right. These internet warriors out there are probably going to say I was all jacked up, but we were in Chicago. And I remember my team leader, K.E., talking to guys that had been on that Iraq trip where the shoe had been thrown at Bush. And the cat guys had left the truck and were going to deploy inside. And as they were going inside to help Bush during the shoe incident, the Iraqi police, they got like sort of, as the cat guys were going in, the Iraqi police were coming out with the shoe thrower and just putting the beat down on this guy. And the cat guys were told to wave off, get back in the truck. And I don't remember if it was that night or the next night at Obama's house in Chicago. We were sitting there at like 1 a.m, and the loudest explosion you could imagine, just boom, sparks flying, loud explosion. First black president, we're like, shit, man, it's on. Yeah. And so we deploy out, and we take up positions, and we're ready to break into Obama's house to secure him, thinking like this is happening, because there were continual kind of booms and booms. And one of the CS guys, one of the counter snipers, came over the air and was like, hey, I think it's a transformer that just blew, stand by, because the power had been cut to Obama's house. Everything went dark. Holy and one of the CS guys was like, hey, I see cat deployed, stand by, hold your position. Their call sign was their call sign was Hercules. So he's like, Hercules, Hawkeye, stand by. I think I see, just hold your position, stand by. And then there were a couple more booms, and he was able to see like, yeah, it was just a transformer blown. And it was pretty late, man. It was like 1 or 2 a.m. So thank God we didn't kick in the door and, go wake Obama and his family up. But anyway, sorry to digress back to a story there. It just came to me as we were talking about the different presidents.
I think it's out of curiosity, is there sort of a code within the Secret Service that you really kind of don't spill the dirt on? Because you don't often get Secret Service agents talk about the protectees and their habits, even.
Yeah. And I think there's sort of, and I think now they actually make agents sign an NDA. And I'm not going to talk about the president's personal lives. Sure. But I'm happy to talk about the Secret Service, the training, and what we go through, and some of the stuff we saw. Yeah. But as far as the personal life, I mean, like I said, I'll talk about. I mean, Bush was kind of like a frat guy.
Yeah.
Very jovial, kind of fun. Obama was more of like a serious statesman.
Yeah.
And
I had heard Clinton from somebody who had worked that detail. I had heard that he was kind of sort of like a Bush. Like he'd go down to the kitchen, like he would talk to the guys, eat with them.
That's right.
He was just a charming dude.
One of my supervisors on the Supernote case had been a detail leader on Clinton's detail, and he would talk about the same things. He'd come down to make a turkey sandwich at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He'd come to the kitchen and just rap with the guys and have a sandwich with them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And and listen, I'm not disparaging Obama by any means. I'm just saying it was just a different guy, man. Just a different guy, and the family was different, and you can't escape the race factor. I mean, there was sort of an increased threat level, and Michelle was like, "Listen, I want cat dudes on the daughters," and so we did a lot of traveling with the daughters, a lot of protective work with Sasha and Malia.
Yeah. I mean, it's understandable, considering like the level of ire coming from some sectors,
Yeah. So, I mean, do you guys think you have any more questions about the Secret Service? You guys want to talk about policing, man? I mean, that's been in the news lately. Do you guys?
I want to get into Capitol security.
Yeah, and Capitol security and policing, because you're an expert on use of force.
Easy,
also.
Dave. I'm not an expert, man. Easy. I'm not an expert.
We have some viewer questions that we want to get to real quick. Alex, thank you very much. Alex said, the Isle of Jura is the same place that George Orwell wrote 1984. I once tried to apply
that's scary.
to the USSS, but on the qualification questionnaire, I was disqualified because I was fired from my first job. From the Secret Service, I guess.
Yeah, okay. That probably wouldn't happen today, but I mean, I don't know how long ago that was. It probably wouldn't happen today. She probably would not be denied employment. I don't know how long ago that was.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be whenever you're applying to any federal agency, just lie about your past because they all want boys.
Yeah. I mean, they may or may not find out about it. Roll the dice. Just don't lie on the polygraph.
Yeah. Oh, I say always lie on the polygraph. Like the polygraph, in my opinion, is...
Yeah. No, I agree. That's a separate conversation. Probably a lot of friends that are polygraphers. But anyway, yeah. What's the next question?
You have friends that are polygraphers. No, I'm just kidding.
I do. I have a lot of friends that are polygraphers. I talk to them quite frequently, and I have my own opinions on the polygraph, but I don't want to say them on here.
Richard, thank you very much for the donation. He said, "Oh damn, I wish I would have prepared questions for this one." Let's see if he had a question in that.
And guys,
does he have a book or anything? Are you writing a book?
No, not writing a book. As I told Jack, I'm just me, man. I'm not here to promote myself. I did a little bit of consulting after I left the Secret Service. I am part of a company, Countermeasure Consulting, but we haven't done anything in a couple years. We were doing a lot of security consulting and sort of active shooter awareness and training. I know that's kind of in the news lately, especially in the last couple weeks. We sort of took a break. My business partner had some health problems, and my mom was very sick, who's since passed. But yeah, I'm not here to promote myself, man.
Okay.
And guys, on that note, please make sure to give this video the little thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever we go live. And leave us some comments. Let us know how you think we're doing. And
also join our Patreon for $1 a month or more. You can support our rent and our drinking habits, and you can hear great stories like the one maybe that you'll tell later. We have exclusive stories from from people, bonus segments that they don't talk about on the live show.
And the link's down in the description.
Yeah. John Dugan, thank you very much. He said, will cashless sales like Google Pay and Apple Pay make our currency more safe and stable?
Well, of course. I mean, anytime you have electronic payments, I mean, it's going to diminish the use of U.S. like hard currency. But I mean, I've been all over the world. I know Jack has, Dave. I know a little bit about your background. I don't know how much you traveled, but U.S. currency is accepted everywhere in the world, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. No matter where you go, you show somebody a 20 or 100, they're gonna take it.
Yeah.
So
and you always go to the black market to get a better. You always go to the black market to get a better exchange rate than the banks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
If you were inclined to do illegal things, but I mean, I'm not. But let's see here. Ian Hutchinson, thank you very much. How do they handle when a member of the first family has to learn to drive?
That hasn't happened in a long time. I think Malia was learning to drive for about 2012, 2013, right as I was leaving the service or shortly thereafter. And a very, very close friend of mine, I don't think he's listening. If he is, DG is his name. He was a favorite of the older daughter. And I don't remember if that was Sasha or Malia. I can't remember who the older daughter was. I believe it was Malia. I could be wrong. But he was a favorite agent of her. DG, if you're listening, I love you, man. Great dude. But they actually took her out to the Secret Service facility to teach her to drive on the driving track.
That's fantastic.
And, so that's how they do it.
How, I mean, with Obama's children being the first kids that you had protected, or that had been protected, was that tough? Because I know that sometimes teenagers and, don't always want people up in their business. And, even on just civilian protective details, will try to ditch their security.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think. So before I got on CAT, when I was in the Washington field office, I had this temporary assignment where I was assigned to this counter surveillance unit. All right. So the service, some of the best in the world in what they call counter surveillance in the service lingo, it's called CSU. So it's this was started all about the time of the Clinton administration, counter surveillance, where you're actually looking for people doing pre-attack surveillance. Okay. And so I was assigned, before I got on CAT, Washington field office, I got this temporary assignment to do counter surveillance. And I was getting ready for work one night, and I get this call, and this supervisor from the president's detail, I look at my work phone, I didn't know who it was, I answered it, and he was like, hey, this is ATSAC, which is a Secret Service term for a supervisor. He said, hey, this is ATSAC so-and-so, what are you wearing right now? I'm like, fuck am I wearing, man? I mean, I'm wearing like, purple, I don't know, red jeans and a shirt or something. I'm trying to blend in. He was like, perfect. I looked at your picture. You're a young guy. Perfect. Meet me at this place, wherever it was. So I show up, and there's another agent there who's wearing jeans and a throwback jersey. I think it was like a like Patriots throwback jersey. And he said, guys, here's the deal. Jenna Bush hates to see agents, and she's going into this bar in Georgetown with her boyfriend, and she'll recognize us. She doesn't know you guys. You guys look great. We're going to send you guys in, and you're just there to monitor her. We're going to have the front covered, the back covered. You're just there to make sure nothing happens. And this was like 2004, man. I'm like, I just got in the Secret Service. You're doing me all this like right away. I was like, Jesus Christ, man. So, at the time I know I look older to you guys now. Then I had a full head of hair, and I was a very handsome fellow and very fit, and thought a lot about myself. So I go in with this agent I really hadn't met before. So we go into this bar in Georgetown, and we're both petrified, right? Because she was notorious. She wanted to live her life. And this is not a bad thing. I'm not disparaging Jenna Bush, but she wanted to live her life, and she wanted not to be watched by, people all the time. And that's fine. I mean, I would hate to have somebody watching me all the time. So we go into this bar, and we're kind of watching as best we can from afar. And one thing leads to another, and the night kind of carries on. Him and I are trying to sip some beers. So it looks like we're just kind of hanging out, a couple bros hanging out. And this DJ kicks open, and they move these tables, and it becomes a dance floor. And true fucking story, man. I'm not making this up. I swear to you. And I'm kind of drinking a beer, I'm standing on this pole, kind of drinking a beer. and the dance floor kind of gets crowded, and somebody's a little bit tipsy, probably had a few too many drinks, and who do you think comes over and wants to kind of like dance with me? None other than Jenna Bush. And I'm just kind of sitting there on the pole, man, on this like big beam behind me, and I'm just kind of sipping on a beer, and I'm acting like I'm not interested, and she's kind of doing her thing. She's really drunk, and her boyfriend, who's now her husband at the time, is dying laughing. I don't think they had any idea I was a Secret Service agent, but I was there, like 6 hour on my hip, man. And my partner's over there, like aghast. He's like, I can't believe this is happening. And I'm just kind of sitting there sipping on a beer, like, yeah, where the party at? You know, just kind of hanging out. And I think she got totally disinterested in me and went back over. I think her husband's name is it Phil Hager, maybe? I can't remember. But anyway.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So sometimes the families, you know, they don't want protection, man. They're not. I don't want to say wise and mature, but they just don't understand the threat level. They don't,
sure.
You know, it's their parent, you know, and
sure.
they don't understand all that.
And it is really intrusive. I mean, to be fair to them.
100%. It's very intrusive. It's terrible. And it's not fair to them. It really isn't, but it is what it is.
How hard is that for Secret Service agents to balance doing their job versus the desires of the client? Obviously, the president is your boss, but you also have a job to do.
It's awful. It's miserable. And my friend DG, I don't know if he's listening, but he got caught in a lot of situations. And I can't remember. I don't have my Google up. If Jack's got his Google up, whoever the older daughter was, that's who he was assigned to, or whether it was Sasha or Malia. And I mean, Christ, man, she was like a 14-year-old girl. They're like experimenting with boys. And there were a lot of times where, you know, she would be in a boy's room and it would be time to go. And she had a curfew and he would have to go up there and be like, hey, Mom wants you home at midnight. Like, we got to go.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So it's terrible. And it puts the agents, and some of these internet warriors out here are thinking I'm probably disparaging Obama, but it's not. It has nothing to do with the Obama family.
Right.
It's just the way it is. Like, the agents will be put in these terrible positions. It's just how it is.
Right. Because if the child complains about that agent, they can get removed from the detail.
Yeah, that's right. 100%.
But they still have to do their job. Yeah. No, it's tough. I mean, you know.
So Bill, James Quinn has a question. This is a little weird, but he says, I had a friend said he saw a Secret Service agent with rip-off male stripper style pants with a P90 on his thigh. Sounds crazy. Can he say if there's something to it?
Yeah. So when I first joined the service, the P90, and I'm not a weapons guy, man, so excuse me, but I believe Fabrique Nationale made the P90.
Yeah.
It was a French machine gun, right? Am I wrong?
It's Belgian, Fabrique Nationale, yeah.
Okay. So Belgian, French, Belgian, it's all the same, right, Jack? But anyway, it's a joke. Yeah. So the ERT, which is the Emergency Response Team, a uniform division section of the Secret Service that is responsible for the perimeter of the White House. When I first joined the service, they carried the P90. I don't know why, but that's what they did. They carried the P90. And that might be what the friend is talking about, that at some point, maybe an ERT guy was carrying the P90. And it was a really odd weapon, right? Wasn't it top loading, Jack?
It's a horizontal magazine, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, horizontal 50 round mag. Jonathan says, could you tell us a little bit of information about the Secret Service hammer teams?
Okay. So I have a good friend, and he probably doesn't care if I mention his name. Michael Pukesh was on Hammer. So Hammer is an acronym. Oh, God, I'm going to F up this acronym, which is, I'm not even going to attempt the acronym, but it's basically the Chem Bio guys and the medic guys. And we on CAT used to love it because the Hammer guy, the Hammer truck was always confused with the CAT truck. So the CAT truck was usually this nondescript Suburban somewhere in the motorcade, but the Hammer truck is this massive, and they ended up getting this custom-made truck, and it was this massive ambulance-looking thing. And the Hammer program really got stood up probably about 2009. A lot of it is really classified. They ended up carrying a lot of classified chem bio stuff, like anthrax type mitigation procedures and mitigation materials. So the Hammer program, these guys were unbelievable. They would get every paramedic certification you could imagine. And these guys they were great dudes, and they would do vehicle extractions with Hearst tools. And so one of the things the Hammer guys found out when this program got stood up was the Hearst tools could not extract the president from the new edition limos. They could not cut in because the armor was so thick. And so these Hammer guys were able to T&E and figure out the best ways if there was an explosion, if there was an accident, God forbid, like a T-bone accident with a limo, how to best get the president out of the limo. And so the Hammer program, if I were to describe it, and just for the layman's term, I'm embarrassed to even make this kind of like a pararescue / like paramedic type.
Like
that's what the Hammer program was.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Jackson asks, have you ever cross-trained with national assets like Delta, SEAL Team 6, or FBI HRT? Which team impressed you the most and why?
So when I got on CAT in 2007, there was this big push. The CAT program was really started at the behest of a guy who ended up becoming Lee Merletti, who ended up becoming Secret Service director. And he formulated a relationship with Delta, and they really assisted with the formation of CAT back in the mid-'80s, and it established this relationship. And so when I got on CAT, we would go down to train with Delta as well as Dev Group or SEAL Team 6. Well, we would go down there a couple times a year. And so it was fascinating and incredible when I got on CAT because, the wars were really at like volcanic like status, right? Like you're dealing with guys that have seen serious combat, man. And so we would get to train with them when they were on their down cycle, where they had come back from a deployment and it was sort of their down cycle. And we would get to train with them, firearms, small unit tactics, all of that. It was unbelievable. Highlight of my life to go down to Bragg or Dam Neck. Unbelievable. Right around 2008, 2009, there was a real push to sort of cross-train with HRT, with FBI's hostage rescue team. And there was a big push to cross-train with them. We did a lot of training with them. They are an unbelievable national asset. They have an incredible sort of mission set. They are the premier national counterterrorism team, right? Like Delta is not going to deploy if there's a hostage situation anywhere in the United States, barring some sort of presidential directive due to the Posse Comitatus Act. But HRT is the premier. They have to be, I believe it's 8 hours. They have to be anywhere in the United States within 8 hours. And they have some pre-packaged, what am I trying to say? They have pre-packaged sort of assets that they can launch and be ready to go and land anywhere in the United States in 8 hours. Those guys are unbelievable. HRT guys, highly trained. We began to do a lot of cross-training with them in 2008, and we used to deploy with HRT a lot with different NSSEs and National Special Security events. A good friend of mine, JQ, was one of the first guys to sort of stand up these liaison units where we would be embedded with HRT or HRT would be embedded with us. And that really became ubiquitous and kind of on a regular basis where we would deploy with HRT. Now, some of the foreign trips, Iraq, Afghanistan, some of the war zone, even some of the Columbias, some of the other trips, really high threat locations, we would have a dev group guy with us or a Delta or CAD guy with us, or in a whole platoon, depending on what was going on. And that became really commonplace after sort of 2008, 2009.
Wow.
Also, let me just add, I've trained and deployed with NYPD, Emergency Services Unit, LAPD SWAT, LA Sheriff's Office SWAT, like a lot of these really premier local SWAT teams I've deployed with or trained with. My running joke, I know you're sort of a quasi New Yorker, Jack. Are you a quasi New Yorker, Dave?
I've been here for like 10 years, so
okay.
I'm
all right. Do you consider yourself a New Yorker? But
yeah, I'm still a tourist to them, I think.
So my running joke with the NYPD and all the rest of the police departments around the country is, so say you're in Dallas or LA, you ask them to do something and you get no attitude and a lot of production, right? The NYPD, I've worked with those guys a million times. ESU, I love those dudes. You get a lot of attitude. Who the fuck are you, man? Well, I mean, come on. You get a lot of attitude, but incredible production, man. Those guys, if you ask them to shut down a street or an entire block, it's freaking done, man. Nobody's moving. And I mean, you won't even see pedestrians walking down the street. They'll put up barricades and amazing dudes. And, if I were to say the most elite tactical team, local police department, I'll take New York ESU, man, anytime. I really will. I mean, those guys are unbelievable.
Go back and watch our episode with Ray Flood. We had a former ESU member on the show. Go check it out, guys.
Yeah, they had a great rescue on there of the Roosevelt tram.
Yep.
Yeah.
People got stuck on the
so train. There was a question that you didn't address in James' thing about the male stripper rip-off pants.
I look, man, I can't speak about male strippers. That's not my thing. And, I know there's probably some Instagram warriors out there. They're going to say I'm like homophobic or something. I can't address male strippers. I'm sorry. I really can't.
One thing I'd like to hit you up about, because we had talked about in the past, a little bit of myth busting. At Trump's inauguration, there was all these allegations that the Secret Service agent had fake hands that he was holding in front of himself. Like these were fake appendages in front of him, and he secretly had like his submachine gun under his trench coat ready to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely, like urban legend, man. Internet urban legend, not true. And that guy, I know who he is. I'm not going to mention his name here. He's a very, I don't want to say famous, but he was a Secret Service supervisor assigned to Michelle's detail. And he just had pale skin. And it just so happened he had big hands. He's a bigger dude. He was really tall. And so that's where that came from, is people saw his hands and they were like, oh my God. And I remember when you're working for another publication, Jack, I think you hit me up and asked me, is this true? And I was like, absolutely not, man.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's funny how people interpret pictures and stories and things.
And they come up with a little story in their mind.
Yeah,
about what.
Yeah. And the Secret Service is, just the public has all these myths and legends, and that was one of them. How
hard? I'm sure that a lot of people in the Secret Service obviously take their job very seriously and don't let their personal politics influence them. But whether it was Obama or Trump or whatever, are there occasionally guys that just like politically are so opposed to the president that they can't put that on a shelf?
I never experienced that. When I left the service, there was a female agent in Denver. I did know her. She was pretty famous in Secret Service / CAT circles. She was one of the only females to try out for CAT and didn't make it. She had failed one of the requirements for CAT is you have to do 3 pull-ups with a 45-pound vest on. Mm. And she was not able to do that. And this is not a disparagement on her physical, characteristics. I just gave that as background, and you can Google her name. It's all over the news, but she had posted some disparaging stuff about Trump when he was elected and said some kind of comment, I'll never protect him or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But but generally the Secret Service, I used to say this all the time when I was an agent and I was active. The Secret Service is apolitical. All right. The Secret Service protects the office of the presidency.
Right.
We protect the person, not the party. And we would get these questions all the time, man. I'd be at a rally in, wherever, like Dubuque, Iowa or something. And people would come up and be like, are you afraid you're going to be out of a job in 3 years? And I'd be like, what? No, we protect the person, not the party. I'm here to protect the office of the presidency, not the party.
Right.
So, short answer to the question, Dave, I never saw that. But when I left, I know that there were some high profile incidents where people made some social media comments about a particular, candidate or the president.
Yeah.
So you can Google that and read about it.
Yeah. So, Colombia, you claimed
Yes.
you weren't there.
Not only claimed, Dave, I was not there. I was not in Colombia. So I know the guy that started, I'm not friends with him. He was on another cat squad, Art Huntington. You can Google. I mean, he was the guy that started the whole Columbia incident. But yeah, man, I mean, I remember that day the scandal broke. We met up, me and the cat squad I was on. My team leader, great dude. I'm not going to mention his name here. It was not KE. It was a different guy. Phenomenal guy. I still talk to him this day. Great dude. We met up. We were the morning shift, the morning cat shift that morning at the White House. President Obama was supposed to go to Andrews and then on to Columbia. And we were the morning shifts. It was probably like 5 a.m, maybe 4:45. And we're driving to the White House. And I'm in the back seat of the cat truck. And I remember looking up and he was just on the phone, man. And he was on the phone and he would, yes, nope, yes, nope. He'd hang up and he would start texting. And we're driving through the streets of DC. It's early morning. Yes, no, yes. And he would start like texting again. And it was early, man. I'm still wiping the sleep from my eyes. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And so we get into a particular section of the White House. I don't want to talk about it here where Cat stages at the White House, but there's a particular room in the White House where Cat stages. So we get down there, we relieve the midnight guys. The midnight cat guys, they tell us, like, these are all friends of ours, so we're like shaking hands, hey, what's up, guys? And something happened last night, man. They're like, we don't know what happened, but something's going on. Good luck to you guys. So we relieve them and they take off. And within a couple minutes later, all of these PPD guys, the Presidential Protective Division guys, start coming down. Did you hear what's going on? Have you heard anything? And they would leave. And within an hour or so, we start getting rumblings that something had happened in Colombia involving a cat guy and a prostitute. That's what we started hearing. And of course, we're texting guys. We're like, well, we know this guy's there. We know that guy's there. And one of the guys from my cat squad was the advanced guy. And this is, super embarrassing for the Secret Service, but for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons for Cat was this guy, I'm not going to mention his name, he's a great dude. I haven't talked to him in a while. He was on Cat with me. We went to team leader school together. Great dude. He was the Cat advanced guy down there. And he had a Delta guy assigned to him because Delta was trying to learn. Sometimes they would get tasked out to do protective assignments around the world. And this Delta guy was trying to learn. This was basically his like protection course. He was going to be assigned to this guy that I knew and learn how to do a protective advance from the tactical aspect. And we're like, fuck, so-and-so's down there with this Delta guy. Shit, man. And I had I got to be careful what I say here, man, because there's so many interconnections with Delta. But yeah, like it started leaking out, and then Obama had to leave that morning. And Obama left that morning to fly to Colombia. And the Air Force One, we knew a guy who had been on Cat that had gone to the protective division, the PPD, the Presidential Protective Division, and he texted my team leader that morning. And we would do what we call pitch and catch, right? So there'd be a cat team at the White House, and we would sort of pitch over to the cat team at Andrews. There'd be a cat team at Andrews, and then they would pitch on to the guys in Columbia. We call it pitch and catch. But I remember my team leader at the time, AB, he got this text message from a PPD guy on Air Force One, and it said, "It is hot as the sun on this plane," meaning like Obama was in the air, right? And the scandal was breaking, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, Secret Service guys, prostitutes." And listen, it was embarrassing for the United States government, all right? The President of the United States is going to Colombia to talk about foreign policy matters directly related to the national security of the United States. And what is he getting questions from the domestic and foreign media about Secret Service guys and prostitutes? It was embarrassing as an American citizen. It was terrible.
Well, I'll tell you what's embarrassing, Bill. What's embarrassing is you guys won't pay your bills.
I know. And that's what ended up happening. And so, the story that not a lot of people know is the team leader on the ground there in Colombia was a former member, great dude. I'm not going to mention his name here. He's an unbelievable guy. I know him very well. The cat school that I got shingles in, I had gone through cat school with him. He had been a member of, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the ISA intelligence support activity. He'd been in the ISA. Mm-hmm. He had been, nobody knows this man, and it's not well known, but he had been sort of a short-term prisoner of war where he had been in Haiti doing like advanced ops and had got taken prisoner by Aristide's like forces and beaten up and like,
holy shit.
Yeah, like the guy was no joke, man. He was legit, and he was a cat team leader. He was a cat team leader in Colombia, and not a lot of dudes can say they were like a short-term POW, And he had these stories about Aristide and his forces. He was held in this cell and beat up and all this crazy wild stuff. But anyway, originally, apparently, the ISA was doing advance ops for Delta, who were supposed to do, I guess, like, if we were going to do an invasion there. But anyway, so the Art Huntington goes out, and apparently this was a well-known scam in Colombia, man. Well-known scam where you go out to a bar, you meet a girl, and you think this is the greatest night of your life. This amazing woman is all about you.
Right.
And, you think this is the best night of your life. And that's what happened. And Art met this girl, and he thought she's really into him, and he took her back. And trying to keep this a G-rated show, guys. They got to know each other. And when they got to know each other, she said, "Hey, you need to pay me." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Gig is up. Hey, you got to pay me." And he threw her out of the room.
That's a clear violation of ethics. It's got to be upfront.
Yeah.
You got to be clear with the business arrangement. Yeah. Got to be clear. That puts a different spin on the story.
Yes. And listen, Art was, I'm a happily married guy, man, but I guess if you were a girl, Art was like a handsome, strapping fellow. And he was appalled that she would even request money. And so the team leader, so this girl goes out, and which would happen frequently, we would have foreign policemen in the stairwells of our hotel, right, to keep us safe. One time I was in Islamabad in Pakistan, this is before I got on CAT, and we were told some Al-Qaeda guys were going to come in and kidnap an agent and slit their throat. And I was staying in the Marriott of the Islamabad Marriott. And so, we would frequently have local police officers in the stairwell of these hotels. And she came out, she saw a local Colombian police officer and said, "Hey, this guy didn't pay me," which is against Colombian law. So prostitution is, I got to get this right. Prostitution in Colombia, I guess, is legal, but it's illegal to not pay them or something. I forget how the law is there.
I mean, you can't be ripping people off. I mean, we all understand that. That's not the question.
Yeah, capitalism, man, right?
Yeah,
It's capitalism. And so she went to the policeman. The policeman called the embassy, and just kind of one thing led to another. And the reason I bring up the team leader from CAD, who was in the intelligence support activity, great dude, man. And he pounded on Art's door forever. You know, all you got to do is pay this girl, man. All you got to do is, and Art just wouldn't come to the door. And it just started this cycle of events. And I remember shortly after Columbia, I guess that was 2011, 2012. I remember going to Las Vegas on a presidential trip, and I was the advanced guy, and I was working with some Las Vegas SWAT guys, right? So we would always work with the local tactical guys. I remember working with some Las Vegas SWAT guys, and we would do our work, and I remember I was kind of out hanging, having some beers, and had dinner with these Las Vegas SWAT guys. Sidebar, super guys, man. I mean, Las Vegas SWAT, you've seen some of the stuff they've done, the active shooter they had at the country concert. Really, really experienced guys. And so I was out having some beers. We're hanging out talking. And I remember one of these guys telling me, the fuck was going on there, man? That is the most well-known scam in Vegas. How did one of your guys fall for that? That basically this hot girl, you know, makes her approaches and comes onto a guy who probably could never pick up a girl like that his entire life. How did he fall for that? And he was saying all the time when he was a Las Vegas patrolman, at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, he would respond to, you know, Caesar's Palace or one of these Vegas hotels. And, you know, he would tell this guy, like, you could never pick up this girl under regular circumstances. Yeah. Pay her and let's get this over with.
Yeah, as a friend of mine said, you got to know your number. Like, if you're a 4 and she's a 9, you need to ask yourself some questions about what's happening right now.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I think
she loves my sense of humor.
We're breaking some news here as far as this is the real story behind the Colombian hooker story.
Yeah, I have not heard this side of the story before.
Yeah, that's what happened. I mean, and there's several other nuances to the story, and unfortunately, a lot of guys I'm not excusing their behavior, but some other guys that had nothing to do with that particular aspect of it got wrapped up in it. My friend JQ, great dude, he got wrapped up in it for a variety of reasons. He did not pick up a hooker, JQ, but he got wrapped up in it for some other stuff, and it was really sad how the whole Secret Service came crumbling down because of that one incident. Because Art, what'd you say, Jack? Didn't know his number?
Didn't know his number.
He didn't know his number.
Well, because ordinarily, I mean, he was without sin cast the first stone.
Yeah. You know? Well, and to be fair, that sort of sets a precedence for any kind of blackmail situation. If girls are like, oh, well, these guys depend on their reputation for their job, you know.
Yeah, so it raised a lot of interesting questions. I mean, the military got dragged into it because there were some military EOD guys. There was, I think, some SF guys maybe that got dragged into it. And so the question became, if it's legal in that country, does it make it illegal for a U.S. citizen? Nope. And so it became, that's exactly right, Jack. It became this whole thing was, if it makes you subject to blackmail, then it's not okay. And so the government started passing these, I don't want to say reforms, but they started instituting these sort of security precautions for your security clearance that, you know, if you have hooked up with a foreign national or a foreign national prostitute, that was a security violation.
Oh, they made that a new rule that if you had hooked up with somebody?
I don't want to say it was a new rule, but they like specified, like, okay, so before it was kind of like, if you met a foreign national, you need to report this, and if you don't report it, it could be considered a violation. And so they sort of altered the rules that said, if you pay for sex internationally that is a clear security violation.
Johnny Law just taking all the fun. They're just sucking the fun out of the job.
I mean,
that's right.
I'm not saying in this, particular instance, but they make it to the point, with their security interviews and things like that, and it's been like that for a long time, that you have to lie on the polygraph if you've ever had any kind of life, they want choir boys and choir girls, but that's often not what the job calls for. Somebody with
and that's true, Dave, and I remember this. I didn't deal with it a whole lot when I was in CAP, but when I was in the field office, I was never a polygrapher. I had some friends that were polygraphers. I have a lot of close friends now that are Secret Service polygraphers. But I remember 2006, 2007, before I got on CAT, talking to friends of mine that were Secret Service polygraphers. And and when I was in the Washington field office, I'd be going to lunch or something, and I would see this guy sweating out in the hallway, and I would find my friend that was a polygrapher, and I'd be like, "Hey, what's up with this guy, man? He's sweating bullets out there. What's going on?" I'd be like, "Listen, on paper, this guy's phenomenal. He's a combat Marine, a tour in Afghanistan, tours in Iraq. He was wounded. He's got a Purple Heart, Silver Star, but he's single, right? He's never been married. And because of PTSD, he took a weekend in Dubai and hired like 4 Russian prostitutes for the weekend." And it's like, is that really that bad? Come on.
When you, like, a security clearance is supposed to determine whether a person is trustworthy with information of the security. It's not a moral judgment about a person. And I feel as though the whole security clearance process has shifted over to that.
Yeah,
we're gonna judge you as a human being, and
it's also not fundamentally not working.
Yeah,
when you have these Edward Snowdens and these people who are divulging all this classified information, like, your process isn't working.
Right.
People are slipping through the cracks.
Right.
Would you guys hire a guy that all these great awards? He was single, saw serious combat. He was a single dude. And he goes for a crazy wild weekend in Dubai.
Not my business.
Yeah, 100%.
Not my business.
Yeah, what he does on his weekends, I don't care about what he does on the weekends, as long as he's not divulging United States secrets.
Right.
So, Bill, I do want to get into you a little bit with the subject of security at Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
This is obviously a subject that is in the press quite a bit since January 6th, but even before that, we had people jumping the fence at the White House. Once or twice, people actually making it inside the White House.
That's right.
I want to ask you about this subject because I feel like maybe our Capitol and maybe some of our VIPs, presidential or otherwise, are not as secure as people think, and that we are one really bad day away from something catastrophic.
Well, and for people who maybe don't keep up on the news, I think that we had the Capitol incident when people on the right, I believe, kind of rushed the Capitol and got inside, broke in. And then on the White House, we had people on the left assault the gates, assault the fences, burn down a guardhouse, and actually injured, I think, 60 Secret Service officers and agents, injured them to the point where the president was taken to the bunker.
What do you guys want me to address first? You want me to talk about generally DC? You want to talk about the riots at the Capitol?
Start wherever you
on
want.
January 6th?
I think it's all interplays with each other there.
Whatever feels natural to you.
Yeah. So let me say overarching. Let's talk first. We live in a free country, man. All right, and if it were up to the Secret Service, we would put the president, the Secret Service would put the president in this bulletproof, protective, blast-proof bubble. We would take him out once a year, He would wave to the cameras and say, "Hey, I'm alive," and then we would put him back in this bubble. And once a year, he would come out. I guess if it's a 4-year term, he would come out 4 times, and that would be it. Unfortunately, we live in a free democracy, and that's not practical. And, keep in mind, man, this is something that's been lost. And I'm not excusing what happened on January 6th at all. And if my sister is listening, I hope she is. I love her. She's had a big impact on my life. We disagree in a lot of things. And my sister is like way left wing, man. Corey, if you're listening, I love you. So this is not I'm not blessing what happened on January 6th by any means, but let's keep in mind, man, that our country was founded by some dudes that were really upset over taxes, right? Isn't that what our country was founded on? I mean, if you think about it, what were the guys, Ben Franklin, George Washington, what were those guys pissed off about? They were pissed off about taxes. And so we have a long history in this country of protests, man, and it should be peaceful protest, right? And I'm not excusing what happened on January 6th, but the challenge for our country, right, is how can people peacefully protest and get their grievances out there, right? But also not be violent and not destroy shit and burn shit. And so, when I watched what happened on January 6th, I think I hit Jack up pretty quickly. I don't know, maybe it wasn't that day, but, I've been to the Capitol a million times, man, especially in my Secret Service days, and the White House is no different. But, we have to secure these facilities, but we also have to allow the public to be able to tour them, to see them. And if people are pissed off about stuff, we have to allow them the right to grievance, right, to protest. And so, obviously, January 6th was not a lawful grievance. It was not a lawful protest. And so, some of the things I thought about that day was, I've worked with the Capitol Police. There are a lot of great dudes and gals, but they have been let down by their agency, right? They've been hypnotized, I think was the exact words I told Jack that day, by access control, right? Every day, pressing a button. You can go in now. Let me see your ID. Oh, you're good. So I also thought about, this is probably 2003, 2004. I was a very young agent, went up on the Capitol for a visit by Vice President Cheney, and I had this like clean press suit. I'm fucking badass, man. I'm a brand new Secret Service agent. Don't fuck with me, right? And I get this magnetometer checkpoint, and the senior agent said, "Hey, stand here and don't let anybody through here with this Capitol Police officer that's not access to go through this the magnetometer. If you have any questions, check with this dude, the Capitol Police officer." And I don't know, I was standing there, I was very excited. I was waiting for Al-Qaeda to come through there any moment, right? I was going to waste me some Al-Qaeda, Bin Laden coming through here. I got you, man. And here came this young girl, probably in her early 20s, no identification. She comes through the magnetometer, tries to go around the magnetometer. She has no identification. I go to stop her, as I'd been told. The Capitol Police officer is like, "Hey, man, wave off. No, let her go." And she walks through, goes around the magnetometer, goes on into the Capitol. And I was like, "WTF, man? What's going on here?" And he was like, "That's Nancy Pelosi's daughter. She's really important. She's like a journalist and a staffer."
Holy shit.
And so I always think about that. And when I saw what was going on January 6th, that's what immediately popped in my mind is these poor guys were set up to fail, right? And I've been up there a number of times. I have seen it where these guys at the different checkpoints, Capitol Police officers would be given a picture of members of Congress and their staff. And these people, I don't want to say untouchable, but, they were supposed to allow these people through the magnetometers.
Unsacked.
And you're supposed to memorize their faces. Yeah. Now, they're supposed to wear a congressional pin, right? And the Secret Service operates on a pin system. We can go on that later if you want. But the Secret Service has what we call a hard pin, or what the Secret Service calls a hard pin. members of Congress have a certain color and shape of pen. I mean, I haven't checked in a while. How many members of Congress are there? There are 400.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy one of those pins on eBay, though, right?
Yeah. But yeah,
I mean, you could, and you take this poor soul, this 23-year-old Capitol Police officer.
Right.
He's supposed to memorize all the faces.
Right.
I mean,
and they can get him fired in a heartbeat. They can get him or her fired in a heartbeat, probably.
That's right. So, so it's an impossible job. They get hypnotized, years and years of access control, years and years of getting scolded for stopping people without their congressional pin.
Yeah.
Do you know who I am? I'm a so-and-so. I'm a staffer to so-and-so. Minimal training. And I just read this morning, I was prepping to speak with you guys. I just read this morning, the congressional IG report came out, and it was like these guys had riot shields that were disintegrating. The first sort of like bottle that got thrown, and the shield was just like falling apart because they were so old. The CDT teams, or the civil disturbance teams, were hadn't trained in a long time, decades in some cases. So you're talking about an agency totally unprepared for what was coming in. Listen, I don't mean to disparage the agency. I just know the Secret Service, as I mentioned earlier on in the interview, some of the best, probably the best in the world, preparatory intelligence gathering, a real academic approach to protection. A lot of foreign protection agencies come to study how the Secret Service does things. So, they just didn't take it seriously. And I remember in 2003, 2004, there were a lot of Bush anti-war protests in Washington, D.C. And I have pictures somewhere. I couldn't find them. I was going to send them to you, Jack, but I'm holding signs, man. I'm like marching in these anti-war protests. I'm a Secret Service agent. And these people, I've got like make love, not war signs, man. And I'm like marching through, and, my job was like, I'd secretly text like, hey, they're peaceful right now, And so why weren't there people embedded in these, the Trump rally, which became the sort of this Trump riot? Where weren't there people embedded in these riots to say, hey, they're moving this way, man. They're really angry.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also tough because whether it was for the Trump, the protesters on the right or the protesters on the left, it doesn't take that many people that have bad intentions.
Stir up some
100%, man. 100%.
To make the entire group, whether they're right or left, look like it's an issue.
Yeah. And, there's kind of a saying in the Secret Service, if you're willing to trade your life, nothing's going to stop you.
Right.
And so, again, man, I mean, if this were China, if this were Myanmar or Burma, whichever one you want to call it, those countries, they would just start hosing people down, right? They just started killing folk.
Yeah.
And we don't do that in this country, man. And we have a right to lawful protest here and in this country. And I think, what is lawful, is a question for the courts, I guess. But that was a difficult situation, and those guys had bad equipment, bad training, and their whole infrastructure. So one of the things too that's difficult, a lot of people don't realize, and I'm probably going to mess up the number, and I forget what I emailed you, Jack, but there's 37 different police agencies in the District of Columbia.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
It's unbelievable, and each have little jurisdictions. So the Capitol Police only have jurisdiction around the Capitol, and then you have the Metropolitan Police Department, which is sort of, even though DC is not a city, but the Metropolitan Police Department is the police agency responsible for the District of Columbia. And so there are so many bureaucratic layers, and there was so much backlash what had happened during the BLM protest with the National Guard out. And you can read some of these Army folk. I just read something today, then they were like, look, we don't want the image of National Guard troops there for crowd control. And so I'm not reporting from the right or the left, man. I mean, I've told Jack that when I emailed him. I'm not reporting from the right or from the left, but you know, the Army, when you read some of these quotations, they were basically saying, we don't want to deploy the National Guard right now. Let's just wait and see what happens. We don't want the National Guard there for crowd control. And haven't we seen this movie before, man, with Kent State? You know, I mean, this happened 50 years ago where they killed college students who were protesting because we put these poor guys in a position that they shouldn't have been. And so I think I read something this morning from a news outlet. They're still blaming Trump for like not allowing the National Guard to deploy. And you know, Trump might have inflamed the tensions there and might have encouraged these people to riot. But I don't think he had. I mean, our country doesn't work like that, where we have a dictator that can say, like, deploy the army or don't deploy the army. It doesn't work like that.
There's some commentary out there from the Secretary of Defense at the time, Chris Miller, and also a lot of it was what was it over the summer when there were a lot of riots and there was a lot of pushback against the deployments of the National Guard, where they were all lined up in front of the Lincoln Memorial. We came very close to having the U.S. Army, the 82nd Airborne, deployed. So that was like in the back of that played into what happened on the 6th and the hesitancy to deploy some of those military forces.
That's right. Yeah. And could you imagine deploying the 82nd Airborne in the streets of D.C.? I mean, unbelievable. And people have this misconceived notion that Trump is this evil puppet master that can say, like, push a button or make a phone call and say, deploy the army. And it just doesn't work like that in our country, man.
Yeah. I mean, I would hate when situations arise like that. I would hate to be the president, regardless which side, you know, you're on, because whether it was the White House, you know, or the Capitol or the Lincoln Memorial, you know, how much damage do you allow people to do? And if the Capitol Police can't handle it, like, do you want the Lincoln Memorial destroyed? Do you want the Capitol, you know, rushed by a gang of people? Do you want the White House, you know, to people to run through the gates?
Yeah,
it's a really difficult thing. I think it would be a really difficult thing to balance.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, this is what I would tell the rioters, man. You have valid grievances, right? Again, our country was founded on grievances of taxation and representation, but there's things in our country that are sacred, man. No matter your grievances, you're going to storm the Capitol. You know, like some things are sacred in our country, man. You know, I mean, I know the Supreme Court has said that flag burning is okay, and I think you should have the right to burn a flag, but there's certain things that are sacred here, man. And like storming the Capitol and sitting at Nancy Pelosi's desk, like, do you not have any dignity?
Right.
You know, and you think you're a patriot? You know, my grandfather fought in World War II, and I think he'd roll over in his grave knowing that you propped your feet up on the Speaker of the House's desk, you know? Like, I think he would lose his mind.
Yeah.
And I mean, both my grandfathers fought in World War II, and I'm okay. Listen, I'm all for protest. Again, this country was founded on protest, but have some dignity, man.
Yeah. It's tough when the rhetoric grows on both sides, when sort of the battle lines harden, when people feel, I don't know, I think that people on the left and people on the right feel as though they have to take a harder position because they have to resist the other side harder because the other side is tyrannical.
That's right. And, you know, the other thing that makes me sick too is, you know, I've talked a little bit about CAD and some of the uniforms and equipment, and, you know, look, man, I'm not a tier 1 guy. I'm sort of a law enforcement guy. And, you know, look, man, I've had an M4 and I've had a breacher behind me, and we're going to go in and grab this MS-13 guy. We're going to explosive breach, and this guy's killed somebody or he stabbed somebody. Or, I mean, I remember one time where a dude had raped a baby, and we're going to go in and grab this bad dude. And, you know, but then I look at some of these riders and they're wearing cry kits and they've got like helmets on. And I'm like, have these guys ever done anything real world, you know? And they're like these screaming open carry. And I know there were some military vets there. You know, I'll tell you, I'll tell you guys a story. I remember I was in this training class one time. This is probably 2013. And I was in this training class. The instructor was like, hey, I just want to recognize the vets here. And I knew a guy in this class, and he had been a Marine in Fallujah and had been wounded, like half his Marine, like squad had been wiped out, really serious combat in Fallujah. And I knew this guy, DG, if you're listening, I love you, man. Great dude. And, you know, so the instructor in this class was like, I want to recognize the vets. And who here is a vet and seen combat? And I was sitting next to my friend DJ. He never raised his hand, right? And this girl in the back raised her hand, and she was like, yeah, I'm a combat veteran. And he was like, okay, yeah, what branch and where did you serve? She was like, I was Air Force, and I was in Kuwait. I was in Kuwait for 18 months, and it was really tough. I had a lot of PTSD from that deployment, and I got sent home. And I just remember looking at my friend DJ, and he was just like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, I lost like 8 guys in my platoon. And Jack, I was not in the military, and I don't mean to like talk about like losing people, but my point is, you look at some of those riders, and they're like guys that are like day traders, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, and they're wearing cry kits, and they're talking about like, you know, right to bear arms and stuff. And I just shake my head at that.
Most of them were LARPers, just like you say.
LARPers.
I'm afraid to say though, Bill, my team sergeant from Special Forces was there that day.
Well, what now? Was he like breaking shit, or was he just present?
He was outside the building.
Yeah, but again, I think there's a massive difference between just like the people out front outside the White House protesting. Like, there's a difference between people peacefully protesting.
This wasn't. I mean, they trespassed, broke through the barriers, and were outside.
He broke through the barriers?
I'm not saying he broke through personally through the barrier, but he was right outside the building.
Well, but you're going to be right outside the building if you're, just like, again, the people at the White House, like, you're going to be outside whatever building when you're protesting. But the people who went in are the people responsible for going in. Not him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Tell it to
Jack,
the judge,
has he been arrested? I mean, I don't know. The FBI is apparently investigating all this.
Knocking on his door. He has not been arrested, to my knowledge.
I mean,
okay, all right.
That's sort of like sort of painting like everybody who is protesting in New York for the people who were breaking in the Gucci stores and stuff. Like, you can't compare the two.
Well, my sister, I talked to her just before I came on here, and she's, you know, really left wing, and she's a liberal, and that's fine. I love her and I respect her, but she was saying some new footage came out where some of these protesters were like, I forget what she said, but she was like, there was some new footage out that, you know, some protester was like, we're going to fucking kill this Capitol police officer, and they grabbed him. I hope that wasn't your buddy there, Jack. I mean, I'm assuming not, but I mean, some of these protesters were.
Yeah, no, my former teammate was not. He did not attack anyone. He was not violent.
Okay. I'm assuming not. He
wasn't fighting the police. Thankfully, I don't. That was not his prerogative. But he was there outside the building, and yeah, I mean, what was it legal or not? I mean, I think you have to. I would encourage him to seek legal counsel. I would just say that.
Legal counsel, yeah, and you know what. When it comes down to like letter of the law, I'm not an attorney, but you know, that building's open to the public, man, and there's no signs up that say no trespassing. So, you know, in theory, I don't know. I mean,
broke through actual physical barricades to get there.
Yeah. Okay.
The people entered, but can you not protest outside the Capitol or the White House? Is that illegal?
After you break through barriers and enter federal property.
Yeah, and if somebody's on a like megaphone saying this is an illegal assembly, you must disperse this, attorney, those kind of things.
I'm pretty sure that's breaking a law. Yeah.
So, but yeah, Jack and I help. I give Jack some information on an article, and yeah, so when I first saw the Capitol stuff, I was like, man, these poor guys at the Capitol, they were not prepared for this.
Yeah.
Poor training. poor leadership. I'm pretty sure the chief now, who's the interim chief, she already got a vote of no confidence. She's probably on her way out, and they're probably going to bring somebody in from the outside, is going to be my guess. But the other thing I'll add too is shame on members of Congress. They want to be holier than now and high and mighty, and they want to clutch their pearls and fan themselves about how awful this was. But listen, they're the ones that control the purse strings of the Capitol Police, and they're the ones that control, like I told you that story about Nancy Pelosi's daughter. I mean, they're the ones that are doing some of this.
Those guys like shit for years and years.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So when this stuff happens and they're clutching their pearls and fanning themselves, it's like, well, wait a second. You guys controlled the budget. You guys control the atmosphere here. So let's not get crazy.
Yeah, it's not like they showed them any respect up until all the news cameras were on this subject.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And some Capitol police officers died, and it's a tragedy, man. And this other protester, this girl, I don't remember her name. I guess she was an Air Force veteran. She died too.
It was Ashley Babbitt.
What'd you say?
Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, Ashley Babbitt. She died, and that's a tragedy too. And I've heard some. I try to listen to both sides of the political circle. Listen, I'm pretty crazy, man. I watch MSNBC. I listen to MSNBC podcasts. I also watch Fox News. I had a college professor that was like, listen and watch both sides, and then somewhere in the middle is probably the truth. But I was reading conservative things saying that, that she was probably killed illegally. I guess they decided yesterday that they weren't going to press charges, but we'll see how that plays out eventually.
Yeah.
So, Bill, tell us, where you are today. I mean, you left the Secret Service. You're in law enforcement today. Where are you at now?
So I'm in the Metro Richmond area. I'm a police officer in a pretty large jurisdiction outside Richmond, Virginia. And listen, man, I love policing. I really do. I tell my son all the time that if you love what you do every day, I love going to work every day. I miss my family. You guys, I don't know if you saw my daughter coming over to give me a kiss, but if I'm not hanging out with my family, I'm working, man, or I'm researching something about work. So I'm a police officer. I love it. I love going to work every day. And when I was giving you guys my origin story, listen, man, when you grow up there like that, when you grow up poor and your mom, when I grew up how I did with my mom, you just have a different perspective on things. And, where I work is a pretty violent jurisdiction. We have shootings every day. There's a lot of very poor Section 8 housing complexes, and those are my beats. And I just have a different perspective on policing, man. And, when you grow up poor and you have a mom the way I did, it's just like, stop, man. Why are you stealing from the store? What are you doing? I'm just like, stop for a second. And, kind of thing where they try to convince a store owner, look, do you really want to charge this guy? And, but, listen, I work in a violent jurisdiction. I've been shot at, and I just talked to a close friend of mine tonight, a guy, one of the reasons I was late, we were just talking, and back in, April, back in January, this guy shot at me and my partner, man, and shot at both of us. And he called me last week and he said, I just got the phone with the prosecutor, and he wants to know, is 10 years good enough? Is 10 years good enough for this guy that shot at us? And I was like, I'll call you back. And I asked my wife, hey, is 10 years long enough sentence for this guy? And she's like, what do you think? And so, yeah, man, my passion in policing is really the training. And when you see what's happening, we've had a particularly rough month, man, a couple weeks actually in policing. Mm-hmm. And my passion, I'm a police trainer. I've been teaching all week at the academy. I'm a part-time trainer. So we have where I work in my agency, we have a full-time academy staff, and they get supplemented during the academy. And so I'm a part-time academy trainer. I'll get called in when the academy is going on. So sort of my passion, man, is we can never eliminate risk in this job. All right. It's a dangerous fucking job, man. And there's a lot of bad dudes out there. but we can mitigate these risks. And how do we mitigate these risks? Is by proper tactics, okay? And the tactics are, making sure we search people. Let's not outrun our headlights, all right? And this is just my own personal thing, man. If it's not rape, robbery, or murder, or a crime against a child, let's pump the brakes here, all right? Rape, robbery, murder, or a crime against a child, we're going to pump the brakes and we'll figure this out. Why are we chasing this dude? And there's been some jurisdictions that have gone to this mentality of where it's bad tactics equals a bad shoot, all right? And where that officer is automatically at fault because of his bad tactics. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because we're dealing with human error, right? Police are humans, and we all make mistakes. And so if you take a sports analogy, right? If our sports heroes, Tom Brady, does he get it right every time? Of course not. He's a human. He makes these millisecond errors. He would win Super Bowls every year. He would complete the pass every time. And so what we want to do is eliminate that, or sort of mitigate that possibility for human error. And that's what I try to teach these young recruits when they're going through the academy, is let's slow this down. The mind can only process information so quickly. And if you put yourself in this situation where you're processing information so fast, you go chasing after this bad guy and you're sprinting at full speed, you cannot think fast enough. All right. Your mind cannot process that information fast enough. Let's slow it down. Why are you chasing this guy anyway? Did he steal from Walmart? Who fucking cares that he stole a pair of socks from Walmart, right?
It's not worth anyone's life.
Yeah, it's not worth anybody's life. And let's put a focus on, priority of life. And so for years in law enforcement, the priority of life was only on the police officer. Let's put a priority of life on everybody. Let's put a priority of life as how can we get this guy in custody safely, and how can we get you to go home at night? And those are not competing, or what do they call that, exclusionary, where they both cancel each other out. Let's make it so your priorities are let's get this guy into custody safely, and let's let you go home at night. And so that's my passion now, man. And listen, I love my sister, and if she's listening tonight, I'll be honest, like my sister's not a fan of the police. She really isn't. And so it's, listen, this is my chosen profession, man, and I'm passionate about it, and I love it, and I'm pretty good at it. And one of the other things too is you watch these police videos, and I was just having a conversation with a guy tonight about this myth of stress inoculation, right? You always hear these police officers talking about stress inoculation. And that was brought up in Dave Grossman's book about this stress inoculation. And a lot of guys have jumped on this bandwagon. And so here's the thing, man. Stress inoculation, you have to do that all the time, right? I've been in enough stressful situations where I've had my gun on somebody, or I've been fighting somebody, where I'm able to overcome all of those sort of innate, pre-programmed human emotions, fight or flight. So I'm able to, because I've just been in them so many times, man, that I can just get somebody and I'm talking to them the whole time. I've got my gun on somebody. I'm like, look, man, do as I'm telling you. Put your hands up, turn around. I'm not yelling. I'm not screaming. And when you look at a lot of these police academies, they're training people, scream, drop the gun, and it's like, slow down, calm down, man. You don't have to do that. Just relax. And so this stress inoculation, we teach people in the academy that we give them these stressful situations in the academy where they're under these stressful conditions. And depending on where you work, you might not see that for 3, 4, 5 years. You might not ever see it. And so this myth of stress inoculation, that's got to be a training thing, man. We need to be training officers every year. We need to be getting them we need to put them in stressful positions every year. And when you look at a lot of these police involved shootings, I've watched them. I'm a police trainer. I don't call myself an expert, but I mean, I've been in law enforcement a long time. Some of these I watch and I'm just cringing, and I'm like, the officer caused that shooting because of bad tactics.
Right.
Yeah.
And not like malevolent intent, but it's like the tactics, the whole bureaucracy and how we train these guys and the procedures are kind of like flawed from like way back in the training academy and everything else.
That's right. Yeah.
It's also
and
oh, please go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave. No, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, it's also, if the politicians are complaining about some of these circumstances and talking about police reform, the reform needs to start at the law level. When I think wasn't it Eric Gardner who was selling Lucy's and resisted?
That's right. Yeah.
It's like, if you don't want that type of interaction to happen,
that confrontation,
don't make selling loose cigarettes
against
an
the
arrestable
law.
offense. Make it a ticketable offense.
Right.
Like reduce the number of frictionable.
And a lot of the. I mean, I think this is starting to become more of a conversation, thankfully. But instead of a law enforcement interaction, there's a lot of situations where like really should be like a social worker or a psychologist. Like
that's right.
That's right. The homeless person.
Mental health, and I go on mental health calls all the time, man.
Yeah.
I go on them all the time, and it's like, why am I here?
Yeah,
this is a mental health call that should be handled by a mental health worker or a social worker. But there are sometimes I go on a mental health call, and I'm like, this person needs to be committed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just before we went on air, I was reading the FedEx shooting that just happened, and that guy's family was like begging for that guy to be committed, apparently.
Yeah.
And he had been interviewed by law enforcement. But, I go on calls all the time, these mental health calls. Yeah. And sometimes the person's armed and they're threatening their family. And, we'll, I don't want to say arrest them, but we'll take them into custody for a mental health evaluation, and they're out, 10 hours later.
Yeah.
And so, it's difficult. But as far as the new recruit, it's very difficult to take somebody, especially a college graduate, okay, right out of college, they're 22 years old. The flip side is we take somebody from the military who's got a little bit of experience, and they always want to harp on, well, I was in the Army, this will be easy, or I was in the Marine Corps, and this will be easy. But listen, man, you're dealing with an entire different set of circumstances here. So, yes, you're in the military. There'll be some common themes here, but for the most part, that part of your life is over. Just pack it away. And so it's difficult to get people to understand you can die on this job, you can be seriously injured or hurt, but not everybody's out here to harm you. So it's very difficult from the police trainer side to get people to understand that. And listen, I've trained people, man. I've been a field training officer where I've gone on calls with people, and they're terrible.
Yeah. And
they were very dangerous. You have to pull them aside. We call it FTO override, where it's basically like, I've got this. You stand over here, and now I handle this, and you tell them after, like, listen, I'm really sorry. I don't think this is the profession for you. And it's difficult. But I've watched a lot of these videos. I just watched the Chicago police shooting that's been all over the news, and it's very, very difficult. And then I don't know if it's made it up to you guys, but the Windsor, Virginia police, where they're yelling and screaming at that Army lieutenant. I don't know if you guys have seen that, where they rip him out of the car and they pepper spray him.
I haven't seen it, but I heard about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's fucking terrible, man. I mean, it's awful. I mean, it's terrible policing. And we have this hesitation in law enforcement. We're like, well, you weren't there. How can you say? No, man, I've been there. I've been in dozens, if not hundreds of those type situations where even non-compliant motorists, and like couple kind words, like, look, bro, look, man, just get out of the car so we can talk about this. Like, take it easy, relax. Let's talk about this. So, we have this hesitation in law enforcement not to, what I call it, a systematic approach to look at these things. So look, what happens when a plane crashes, right? We take a systems approach. Why did this plane crash, right? We take a systems approach, and we have pilots look at this and they break it down. Was this a mechanical error? Was this a pilot error? What happened? What caused this plane to crash? So what's happening in these police interactions is it's, in my opinion, getting hijacked by a very vocal minority, right? And no other profession in this country do we have people in that profession judging what happened, right? If there's a medical malpractice suit, do we have non-doctors sit on that board? No, we have doctors sit on the board to figure out what happened.
Right.
If we have a lawyer malpractice, do we have citizens sit on that to figure out what happened? No, we have lawyers figuring out what happened.
I mean, interestingly, on a jury, it's usually not people of the same profession, unless you're talking about the military. It's
not. But what I'm specifically talking about is some of the civilian police review boards.
Right.
I know New York has a very powerful one. The most powerful one is in Oakland, which has hire and fire authority, right? And so they'll fire. That's why they've had like 9 chiefs in 4 years in Oakland.
Yeah.
And I know New York has a pretty powerful civilian police. And I'm not excusing misconduct by officers by any means, but I think we need to have a sort of systems approach. Mm-hmm. What went wrong here? Did the officer use bad tactics? And you need to have people that are sort of schooled in the profession, right? Like police officers say, yeah, look, the officer took a bad stance here, or he escalated this, or, he should have backed off here. And the only people that really know are police officers to be able to talk intelligently about that.
It's almost as if police agencies need to do like a 5-day selection course with people to put them through stressful situations just to see what kind of personality they have. Because but
the thing is, you need to do that continually. You can't just have one and then, okay, you're hired, and then, you don't have another stressful situation. Right. I just was having this discussion with a friend of mine today when I was at work, and we were talking about that, and we were talking about the shooting where the female officer in Minnesota grabbed her taser. And we were just talking about that, and we're like, him and I have been in dozens of stressful situations, man, dozens, and it's serious, and people have guns, and we're really worked up, and him and I are just talking to each other like I'm talking to you guys now, and like we just can't imagine grabbing the wrong weapon system. I don't know what was going through her head, and I feel really bad for her. She's probably going to go to jail.
Yeah. To be honest with you, though, I can in a way, because if somebody goes, I'm not. Like, she shouldn't have shot him, but I understand the fear that a police officer may have when somebody goes into their car when they don't want to be arrested, and they go into their car. You're worried about a weapon. If she has not done enough training, if she has not, if she was afraid, we do weird things when we're afraid, And he was afraid. He was afraid of them. They were afraid of him, and it, the fear escalated.
I hate to say this today, but when was the last time she was afraid?
Well,
I've been afraid many, many times, man. And, I was just teaching in the academy this week or last week, and I was talking about what happens to you, not philosophically, but physiologically. And, I'm embarrassed here, man, because we have a combat vet here, and I only know Jack's background. Dave, I'm sorry if you've been in combat too, but I've been in stressful situations, man. I've been in shootings, and I know what happens to my body physiologically.
Right.
And it's just really silly, man. But my left leg starts to shake a little bit, like I'm on a door, and we're gonna kick in this door. We're gonna explosive enter. We're gonna go grab this dude, and I know that my left leg shakes a little bit, and so I can overcome that. I know I get short of breath, right? And so I've been in enough situations that I know how to overcome that.
Right.
When was the last time she was in a situation?
Probably never,
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is she she had how long? 26 years or something, they said?
I didn't know that. So,
Yeah. She was a 20+ year veteran. And so my point is, we get these like stressful situations in the academy.
Yeah.
when is the next time
Right.
we have people in a stressful situation? And what we don't want to have happen is we give you a stressful situation in the academy. Your next stressful situation is like life or death, man. And,
Right.
we want to have some training in between. And so, so we can teach people, look, man, slow it down, breathe. There's a sort of a situation, there's a motto in law enforcement that is slowly catching on. My department adopted it several years ago, and it's this equation. It sounds really silly. Time plus distance equals safety. Okay, so you're in an armed confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, time plus distance equals safety. If it's not one of these situations where somebody pulls a gun and you immediately have to return fire to save yourself, if you can back off and slow everything down, it allows you to process information, because so many things are going on. Time plus distance equals safety. If you can back off, slow everything down. All right, now what do we have?
Right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying here?
100%. And I think that what you said earlier needs to be emphasized too, is that a kind word would have done wonders. Like, I think that a lot of times police need to stop being trained to rely on their authority, because that just increases
100%.
fear and resistance on the other side. Like,
Bill,
yeah.
I really thank you for having this conversation tonight. I mean, everything from the Secret Service and the counter assault team to talking about policing, which is an increasingly relevant and important question in our country that's obviously not going away. It's not getting better on its own. Like, we need to do some things as a country to kind of, we'll never completely solve the problem, but to make it, I think we make it a hell of a lot better. Any final thoughts? I want to ask you if you can stick around for the bonus segment afterwards for like 10, 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts as we wrap this up tonight?
No, man. I mean, listen, I was very humbled to be in the Secret Service. Incredible group of people. You can't imagine education and competency level of that agency. I was very proud and humbled to be there. And I'm very passionate about policing and police training, and just, don't jump on the bandwagon when you see this stuff. I have a very close professor, college professor that teaches at VCU, and he has this saying, man, until you've held a pair of handcuffs, don't pass judgment. So anyway, just that, man. So let's go on to the bonus segment. If you guys give me 1 second, I'd just take a quick break.
I think we might have one or two questions that we did not get to. So James, hold on. Sorry about this. These are people who donated the show, so we're kind of
no worries, man.
James, thank you again. And James said the question was all about the pants, Jack. James is still working.
Are you wearing pants, Jack?
What
is that question?
I promise I'm wearing pants.
Alex, thank you very much. What kinds of training or improvements do you think that police departments need to make? And what was your favorite meal you had while on duty? We kind of talked about the improvements that you think police departments need to make.
Favorite meal?
Yeah.
Geez, man. Again, this is a true fucking story, man. When I was in CAT, we went to Afghanistan. I believe Obama. I don't remember the year, but we flew into Afghanistan. It was a quick in and out. There's a whole side story. It was sort of a classified trip. I did lie to my wife, tell her where we're going, but we did the visit. He did a Lasad Air Base, maybe. I don't remember where the air base was, Obama, but he flew out, and so it was a pitch and catch, as I talked about earlier. There was a team catching him, so we were stuck there. And so somebody said, hey, you guys hop on the spare Air Force One, right? There's always a plane. There's 2 planes that land in case there's a mechanical issue. And so we were going to fly back to Germany on the spare Air Force One. So me and the 5 other guys on the CAT team, we jump on the spare Air Force One. Nobody else is on there. It's just 6 of us CAT dudes. And so we lift off from Afghanistan, and the Air Force stewardess comes back and says, listen, guys, we baked all of these buffalo wings, and we have a couple cases of Yingling. Would you guys be interested? It's just going to go to waste. And a lot of people don't know this, but the president is privy to new release movies at the time. I don't remember what the new release movie was at the time, but we sat on Air Force One on our way back, like 8-hour flight to Germany, and we drank Yinglings and ate buffalo wings. We were the only dudes on the plane, and we partied like rock stars, man, as we flew back to Germany. So that was my most favorite meal.
Yeah,
that's a pretty
on an empty Air Force One.
And then James, thank you again. James said, "Look, I'm a JQ and a vet 115th Infantry. This is a great cover story. The pants were used with the hooker. Always lie on a polygraph. Take care, guys."
Okay.
And then let's see here. I think that's about it.
All right, guys.
Yeah, that's it.
So join us next Friday, episode 90. We're going to have Lindsay Moran on the show. She was a CIA case officer, served in Eastern Europe, Macedonia. I read her book actually this week called Blowing My Cover. Super good book. So we'll have her on next Friday. Bill, thank you again. Really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Bill, it's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm a big fan. I listen to you guys every week. I'm a subscriber, and I'm really honored to be here. You guys have had some true fucking American heroes on here, and I'm embarrassed that I'm here.
No, you're one of them, and we appreciate it.
And thank you, Dee. If you guys notice, the production value is a lot nicer on the show tonight. It's because Dee is producing behind the scenes here. Awesome job, man. Thank you.